Hi guys! Tonight we step quietly into a world before cities, before roads, and before anyone could write down the things that frightened them. Around you, a pale moon rests above a wide Ice Age valley. Snow lies in soft patches between dark grasses, and a thin line of smoke rises from a limestone cave where a small group of early humans shelters beside a crackling fire far away. You hear the low call of an animal moving across the frozen ground, then the whisper of wind through a stand of pine trees. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle beneath your blankets, you can leave a comment telling us where you're listening from and what the local time is there. It is always comforting to imagine people in different places sharing the same quiet journey into the past. Now, dim the lights, and let your eyes adjust to the ancient darkness. You stand near the mouth of the cave, feeling cold air against your face as the world around you belongs to the Upper Paleolithic, a long period of prehistory that began more than 40,000 years ago in many regions and lasted until the end of the last Ice Age. Human communities are small. Most people live in groups of relatives and trusted companions, moving when animals migrate, when plants become scarce, or when the weather changes. There are no permanent farms here. There are no shops, roads, or neatly labelled containers of food waiting on wooden shelves. People survive by hunting, gathering, fishing, collecting roots, and remembering where useful plants grow. Stone tools are used for cutting meat, scraping hides, shaping wood, and preparing bone. Spears may be tipped with stone or sharpened by fire. Animal skins provide simple coverings, basic loincloths, blankets, and material for shelters. Transportation is mostly the strength of your own legs. You walk where the herds walk, you rest where water can be found, you stay close to places where firewood, stone, animals, and edible plants are within reach. The climate is unstable. Ice sheets cover large parts of the northern world, while other regions experience cold grasslands, dry savannas, forests, and valleys shaped by repeated changes in temperature. Even areas near the equator can pass through harsh dry periods. Rivers shift, plants disappear from familiar places, herds move farther than expected. Today, you can look at a weather forecast and complain gently when it predicts rain during the weekend. Here, the sky offers no helpful little symbol on a glowing screen. Every cloud must be watched. Every wind carries information. You notice that the people near the cave do not speak loudly. Their language may be rich, but their voices remain low after sunset. Communication matters deeply. A gesture can warn of danger. A change in expression can tell others that tracks have been found. A few quiet sounds can guide a group through tall grass without startling nearby animals. Inside the cave, the fire throws warm light across rough stone walls. Several adults sit close together. One person turns a piece of wood in the flames, carefully hardening its point. Another uses a flint tool to scrape fat and tissue from an animal hide. The scraping creates a steady, dry, hurrying sound. Near the back of the shelter, children watch. They are learning without a classroom. A child studies the angle of the tool. Another watches how sparks are protected from the cold air. An older person shows them how to twist plant fibers into cord. Knowledge passes slowly from one pair of hands to another. This cooperation is one of the most important facts about early human survival. A single person alone would struggle to hunt large animals, protect a fire, care for children, gather plants, and watch for danger at the same time. Groups survive because tasks are shared. Food is often distributed. Injured people may be supported. Elders preserve memories about seasons, water, animals, and routes through the landscape. Fear, in this world, is not simply panic, it is information. You hear something outside. A branch bends beneath weight. Every face near the fire becomes still. No one rushes into the night. No one begins a loud and theatrical speech. which is probably fortunate, because speeches are not especially useful when something large may be standing beyond the firelight. Instead, people listen. The sound comes again, followed by a soft snort. It may be a reindeer moving near the slope, or perhaps a wild horse searching beneath the snow for grass. Wolves also travel through these valleys. Cave lions once lived across parts of Ice Age Eurasia, and hyenas occupied many regions as well. Large predators are real dangers, especially near sleeping areas, food remains, or vulnerable children. But predators are not the only concern. You begin to understand that early humans fear many things at once. They fear injury because even a small wound can become serious. They fear sickness because its cause is invisible. They fear losing the fire in wet weather. They fear becoming separated from the group. They fear that the herds will change direction. They fear that winter will last longer than stored food. Most of all, perhaps, they fear uncertainty. You step closer to the fire and feel its heat on your hands. Smoke gathers near the ceiling before drifting out through the entrance. It smells of pine, dried grass, cooked meat, and damp stone. The scent clings to hair and animal skins. Smoke can irritate the eyes, yet it also discourages insects and some animals. A lesser-known detail of prehistoric life is that caves were not always deep, comfortable homes. Many were cold, dark, smoky, and damp. People often preferred cave mouths, shallow rock shelters, or temporary structures made from wood, hides, brush, and sometimes large bones. The familiar image of everyone living permanently in deep caves is much too simple. Archaeologists continue examining evidence about how often prehistoric people used caves as homes. Seasonal camps, ritual spaces, workshops, or temporary shelters, some sites show repeated occupation over many generations, while others appear to have been visited only briefly. You look toward the cave wall and notice faint stains of red pigment. Natural minerals such as ochre were ground into powder and mixed with liquids. These pigments could be used on cave surfaces, tools, objects, hides, and possibly bodies. Red ochre has been found at many prehistoric sites, sometimes far older than the famous painted caves of Europe. Why did people value it? Perhaps it marked identity. Perhaps it carried symbolic meaning. Perhaps it was useful in hide preparation or as part of practical mixtures. Scholars remain divided on how often ochre was decorative, ritual, social, or functional. The mystery is gentle here, not frightening. It reminds you that these people are not merely surviving from one meal to the next. They observe patterns, they decorate objects, they remember the dead, they care for one another. They may tell stories beside the fire, repeating sounds and gestures that explain animals, storms, ancestors, and distant places. Outside, the night grows colder. Stars appear with extraordinary brightness because there are no cities to soften them. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like pale smoke. Mountains stand in the distance, their snowy edges shining beneath the moon. You step carefully over packed earth near the entrance. Footprints cover the ground. Some belong to people, others belong to dogs or early domesticated wolves in later prehistoric settings. Although the timing and process of dog domestication remain subjects of continuing research. Nearby, animal bones lie where they were cleaned and broken. Early humans often cracked long bones to reach the rich marrow inside. This was valuable food, especially in cold environments where fat provided essential energy. Stone flakes rest among the debris. Some are sharp enough to cut skin with little pressure. You pick up one carefully. It is cool and rough along one side, smooth and dangerously sharp along the other. Someone made it by striking stone against stone with skill. The shape was not accidental. Toolmakers understood how certain rocks fractured. They selected good material, prepared the core, and controlled each blow. Their hands carried knowledge built through years of practice. Fear encouraged this patience. A poor tool could mean wasted food, a weak spear could fail during a hunt. A badly prepared hide could become stiff and useless in winter. Yet fear did not paralyze these people. It guided attention, it encouraged preparation, it taught them to notice tracks, weather, smoke, animal calls, and the moods of companions. You sit beside the fire. An elder adds a small branch, careful not to smother the coals. Sparks rise and vanish in the smoke. A child leans against a folded hide. Someone places heated stones near the edge of the hearth. Another person checks the cave entrance. The group is safe for this moment. That may be the quiet answer beginning to form. Early humans did not fear one single creature more than everything else. Their deepest fear was the loss of what made survival possible. Food, warmth, shelter, knowledge, family, the return of daylight. The familiar path of the herds. Beyond the cave, the ancient world remains wide and uncertain. Inside, the fire continues to burn. The fire continues to burn behind you as you move closer to the mouth of the cave. Outside, the valley has become almost entirely dark. Only the snow, the stars, and a thin curve of moon provide any light. The landscape that seemed wide and open during the day now feels smaller, divided into a few pale shapes surrounded by shadow. A low ridge rises to your left. A frozen stream lies somewhere below. Beyond that, grasslands stretch toward distant hills where herds may be resting. You cannot see very far. That simple fact changes everything. During the day, early humans can watch the movement of animals, study clouds, follow tracks, and recognize familiar features in the land. At night, vision becomes less reliable. The senses must work differently. Hearing becomes more important. Smell matters more. Memory fills the spaces that your eyes cannot. The people beside you understand this very well. They do not treat darkness as an empty part of the day. Night has its own rules. In Upper Paleolithic communities, there are no walls around the settlement, no locked doors, and no lamps bright enough to illuminate the surrounding valley. A cave entrance or rock shelter offers some protection, but it cannot completely separate people from the animals outside. Temporary camps made from hide and wood are even more exposed. Fire becomes the main boundary between the human group and the darkness beyond. You notice how carefully the camp has been arranged. The sleeping places are farther inside the shelter. Animal skin cover the ground and help reduce the cold rising from the stone. Tools remain close to the adults who may need them quickly. Spears lean against the cave wall. Food scraps are kept away from the sleeping area when possible, since strong smells can attract unwanted visitors. Near the entrance, 2 adults remain awake. They are not standing like guards in a later army. There are no uniforms, formal ranks, or written schedules. Yet the group likely shares responsibility for watching the fire and listening to the night. In a small community, everyone knows who is tired, who is injured, who can hear well, and who has enough experience to recognize danger. Social structure is based on family ties, trust, age, skill, and cooperation. You sit near one of the watchers. The person beside you holds a wooden spear across their knees. Its shaft has been shaped with stone tools and smoothed by repeated scraping. The point may have been hardened in heat, in some regions and later periods. Bone or antler tips can be attached with plant fibre, sinew, resin, or other natural adhesives. Such weapons are practical, but they are not magical protection. They require strength, timing, and close observation against a large predator. Avoidance is usually much safer than confrontation. The night air carries a smell of wet earth beneath the frost. You hear the soft movement of wind through dry grass. Then comes the distant call of a wolf. It is not the loud, theatrical howl familiar from films. It rises slowly, holds for a moment, and fades across the valley. Another call answers from farther away. The people near the fire listen, but they do not panic. Wolves are dangerous under certain conditions, especially when food is scarce, yet they usually prefer to avoid healthy groups of humans. Early people learn to read their behaviour. A distant pack moving across open ground is different from animals circling repeatedly near a camp. A single call is different from several short sounds close to the entrance. Fear becomes useful only when it is specific. You might wonder how anyone could sleep while predators move through the darkness. The answer is partly exhaustion. After a day of walking, gathering, tool-making, carrying children, and searching for food, the body needs rest. Sleep is not optional simply because the night is uncertain. People create safety through numbers, fire, shelter, routine, and familiarity with the land. Today, you may check the door twice before going to bed. Even though the greatest threat nearby is probably a forgotten delivery package or a cat deciding to knock something from a table, here, checking the entrance is a matter of survival. A branch snaps below the cave. The watcher raises one hand, conversation stops. You hear a slow scraping sound, followed by heavy breathing. Something is moving near the stream. The group waits. A few moments later, the animal steps into the faint moonlight. It is a bison, broad and dark, its coat thick against the cold. It lowers its head toward a patch of exposed grass and pushes aside snow with its muzzle. The people relax slightly. Even so, no one approaches. Large herbivores can be as dangerous as predators. Bison, wild cattle, mammoths, and reindeer may injure humans when frightened, cornered, or protecting their young. Prehistoric hunters didn't survive by assuming that plant-eating animals were harmless. They survived by respecting distance, wind direction, herd movement, and escape routes. The bison remains below for several minutes. You can hear it breathing. Its hooves press into crusted snow. Eventually it moves away, becoming another shadow in the valley, inside the cave. Someone adds a small piece of wood to the fire. Fuel must be used carefully. In cold regions, suitable wood may be scarce, especially on open tundra. People gather branches during daylight, carry them over long distances, and sometimes burn bone when wood is limited. Studies of prehistoric hearths have found evidence that animal bones, particularly those containing fat, could serve as fuel. This is one of those small details that makes ancient life feel both strange and practical. A bone that once supported an animal might later warm a shelter. Nothing useful is butted. Researchers continue to question how prehistoric groups organized nighttime watches and whether regular watch patterns existed in different environments. Archaeological evidence can reveal hearths, sleeping areas, tools, footprints, and animal remains, but it cannot easily show who stayed awake at midnight or how often people change places near the entrance. Still, the arrangement of living spaces offers clues. Some cave sites contain repeated hearths near entrances, where smoke could escape and light could spread outward. Other shelters show central fires surrounded by working and resting areas. The exact pattern depends on season, group size, cave shape, wind, and available fuel. You watch sparks lift toward the ceiling. The fire gives heat, but it also gives sound. Dry wood cracks, fat hisses when it falls onto hot stone. Flames move with the air. These noises can be comforting, yet they also hide quieter sounds outside. The watcher occasionally turns their head away from the hearth. Listening beyond the crackle, you do the same. At first, you hear only wind. Then you notice layers. There is water moving beneath thin ice. There are small animals rustling among stones somewhere above. An owl gives a low call, and deer. Far across the valley, wild horses shift together in the darkness. This ability to separate sounds is learned. Children grow familiar with the voices of animals long before they can explain them. They learn which birds call at dusk, which hoofbeats belong to reindeer, and how wolves sound when travelling. Elders may imitate animal calls while teaching. using gestures and stories to connect sound with behavior. Knowledge enters the memory through repetition. A quirky detail from prehistoric archaeology is that some caves have unusual acoustic qualities. Certain chambers carry echoes, deepen voices, or make dripping water sound strangely close in a few painted caves. Researchers have noticed that decorated areas sometimes correspond with strong echoes or resonant spaces. Some historians suggest that these acoustic effects influenced where people painted, performed rituals, or told stories. While others disagree and warn that the pattern may not apply widely, you can imagine how powerful such a place might feel. A whispered voice could return from the stone. A footstep might seem to come from behind you, without scientific explanations for echoes. The cave itself may have appeared alive with memory, spirits, or unseen presence. Yet the people here are not helpless before mystery. They test the world through experience. They learn that one sound repeats while another moves. They recognize the echo of a falling stone. They know how wind changes inside narrow passages. Observation slowly turns uncertainty into knowledge. The fire burns lower. One watcher wakes another with a gentle touch. No words are needed. The new watcher sits near the entrance, wraps an animal skin more tightly around their shoulders, and looks toward the dark valley. The first lies down beside the others, close enough to feel their warmth. You remain awake for a little longer. The darkness still hides predators, weather, and unfamiliar movement. But it also contains ordinary life. Animals feed, snow settles. Water flows beneath ice. The stars travel slowly across the sky. Fear does not disappear. It becomes quieter. It waits beside patience, memory, and trust. Behind you, families sleep peacefully because someone is listening beyond the firelight. Morning arrives slowly over the valley. The darkness does not vanish all at once. It thins along the eastern horizon, turning from black to deep blue, then to a pale grey that reveals the edges of hills and the frozen line of the river. Inside the cave, the fire has become a bed of red coals. Smoke hangs faintly beneath the stone ceiling. The air smells of ash, damp fur, and the remains of yesterday's cooked meat. You wake with the others. No one has slept in complete comfort. The ground is hard, the air is cold, and every covering has been shared carefully. Yet the group rises with quiet purpose. An adult kneels beside the hearth and blows gently across the coals. Another adds dry grass, then a few thin twigs. A small flame appears. The first success of the day is simple. The fire has survived. Now attention turns to food. The climate surrounding you is cold and dry. Open grassland spread between patches of woodland, and large animals move seasonally across the region. Reindeer, wild horses, bison, deer, and mammoths follow grazing routes shaped by snow, water, and changing vegetation. Human groups follow many of the same patterns, not because they are wandering without direction, but because food appears in different places at different times. These people are hunter-gatherers, their economy, although no one here would use that word, depends on natural resources rather than crops or herds owned by humans. Meat may provide important calories, especially during cold seasons, but plants, berries, roots, seeds, nuts, eggs, fish, shellfish, and insects can also matter greatly depending on the region. The group cannot rely on one food source. A failed hunt is not only disappointing, it may mean that older people eat less. It may mean children receive smaller portions. It may mean the group must move sooner than planned. You notice how little food remains near the hearth. A few strips of dried meat rest in a skin pouch. Some cracked bones lie beside a flat stone. There are roots gathered days earlier, now soft and wrinkled. The group eats slowly, dividing what remains. Hunger is present, but it is not treated with panic. People here know hunger well. You chew a small piece of dried meat. It is tough, smoky, and slightly bitter. It requires patience. No one complains about the texture. There is no menu, no sauce, and certainly no cheerful server asking whether everything tastes all right. Today, food can appear after a short walk to a kitchen or a shop here. Every meal begins with landscape, weather, memory, an effort. Several adults prepare to leave. Before hunting begins, they study the world around them. Snow has preserved tracks near the river. Reindeer pass during the night. Their hoof prints form a loose line moving toward the south. Smaller marks show the path of hares and foxes. A wolf crossed the open ground, then turned toward the hills. You follow the hunters down the slope. Their clothing consists of animal skin coverings fitted around the body, basic loincloths beneath heavier layers, and pieces of fur wrapped around the feet. Bone needles, known from Upper Paleolithic sites, allowed people to make more closely fitted garments than simple hides draped over the shoulders in cold environments. This was an important technology. One of the hunters carries a long wooden spear. Another holds a shorter weapon tipped with stone. A third carries cords made from twisted fibre and strips of hide. These may help bind tools, secure loads, or assist in simple trapping methods. Hunting large animals is rarely a matter of running directly toward them. It requires planning. You move along the edge of the valley, keeping the wind in your face so that your scent travels away from the herd. The hunters pause often. They examine broken grass, fresh droppings, and marks where animals have brushed against shrubs. One person touches a hoof print. The snow inside it is still loose. The herd cannot be far away. Early humans became skilled trackers because animals from animal signs carried information about direction, speed, size, and time. A deep print might show that an animal was heavy or moving quickly. The spacing between tracks could suggest whether it walked or ran. Droppings, disturbed soil, hair caught on branches, and feeding marks all helped hunters build a picture of movement. This knowledge was not written down, it lived in memory and conversation. Children learned by walking beside adults. They watched someone point to a track, then followed the line until the animal appeared. Over years, observation became instinct. You continue toward a narrow pass between two low ridges. Here, the hunters stop to discuss their plan. Reindeer may pass through the gap because steep ground limits their movement. People in many prehistoric regions used natural features such as cliffs, rivers, marshes, and narrow valleys to guide animals toward waiting hunters. Some groups may also have built fences, stone lines, or simple barriers in certain landscapes. Pits or traps could be prepared, although direct evidence is often difficult to interpret. Archaeologists continue examining evidence about how frequently prehistoric people use large coordinated drives compared with smaller, more flexible hunting methods. Some sites contain the bones of many animals killed at once, while others suggest repeated hunting of single animals or small groups. The people beside you arrange themselves quietly. Two hunters move toward higher ground. Others remain near the pass. No one speaks loudly. A gesture indicates where each person should wait. You crouch behind a low bank of earth. Cold enters through your clothing and settles around your knees. You smell wet soil beneath the snow. Your fingers tighten around a rough wooden shaft. Then you hear movement, not running, only the soft, repeated sound of hooves pressing into frozen ground. A small herd of reindeer appears beyond the ridge. Their breath rises in pale clouds. Their coats are thick, antlers move above them like branches. The hunters do not attack immediately. They watch. A healthy adult animal can be difficult and dangerous to approach. The group looks for weakness, position, and opportunity. A younger reindeer walks near the edge of the herd. An older animal favours one leg. Patience matters more than excitement. For a long moment, nothing happens. The herd changes direction before entering the pass. Perhaps one animal smells something unusual. Perhaps the wind shifts, the reindeer move away, first slowly, then with greater ebb. The hunt is over. No spear is thrown, no animal falls. The hunters remain still until the herd disappears. You feel disappointment, but not surprise. Hunting often fails. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies show that even skilled hunters may return without meat, though direct comparisons with prehistoric groups must be made carefully. Success depends on animal behavior, weather, landscape, tools, and chance. Historians still debate whether popular images of prehistoric life place too much emphasis on large game hunting and not enough on gathering, fishing, trapping, and small animals. Archaeological sites preserve bones and stone tools well. While soft plants and woven containers often disappear, this can make meat seem more dominant than it truly was. The group adjusts. 2 hunters continue tracking. The others turn toward a patch of woodland where edible roots and stored nuts may be found. Survival depends on flexibility, not pride. You walk beneath leafless trees. An older woman kneels near the base of a plant and uses a pointed digging stick to loosen frozen soil. Beneath it lies a thick root. It is small, but useful. Another person collects dry seeds from standing grasses. Children search for nuts hidden beneath leaves. A lesser-known detail is that prehistoric people sometimes heated stones and placed them into skin bags, bark containers, or pits filled with water to cook food. This method allowed boiling even before pottery became common. Heated stones could soften roots, render fat, and prepare foods that were difficult to eat raw. By midday, the group has gathered enough to make a thin meal. It is not a feast, it is enough. Back at the cave, roots are roasted near the coals. Seeds are crushed on a flat stone. A little dried meat is added to warm water. The smell is earthy and smoky. You sit with the others and eat. Hunger remains one of the oldest human fears because it cannot be reasoned away. It returns each day. Yet people answer it with cooperation, knowledge, patience, and memory outside. The empty valley no longer seems empty. It is filled with signs, tracks in snow, roots beneath soil. Birds near water, herds moving beyond the hills. You begin to understand that survival does not belong only to the strongest hunter. It belongs to the group that notices the most, remembers the longest, and shares what it finds. The thin meal warms you for a little while. Steam rises from the shallow cooking container, carrying the smell of roots, smoke, and animal fat into the cool air of the cave. Around you, the group eats without hurry. Every mouthful matters, but no one rushes. The fire gives the food a faint bitterness, and grains of ash cling to the edges of the heated stones. Outside, the sky has changed. Clouds gather above the western hills, covering the pale winter sun. The wind that moved gently through the valley in the morning now arrives in colder waves. It brushes loose snow from the ridge and sends it drifting across the entrance. An elder looks toward the sky. The expression on the elder's face is calm, but everyone begins to move. During the last ice age, climate conditions could shift over both long and short periods. Huge ice sheets shape much of the northern world, while cold tundra, dry grasslands, forests, and steppe environments stretched far beyond the glaciers. Temperatures were often lower than today, but conditions were not simply frozen everywhere. Some periods were relatively mild, others brought severe cold. Strong winds and reduced plant growth for hunter-gatherers. Winter was not merely an uncomfortable season, it changed the entire structure of life. Animals migrated or gathered in sheltered valleys. Plants became harder to find. Rivers froze. Daylight shortened. Travel required more energy. Clothing, shelter, fire, and stored food became essential technologies. You watch the group prepare for the approaching weather. Several people carry firewood deeper into the shelter. Dry branches are placed away from damp stone. Pieces of bark, grass, and fungus used for tinder are checked carefully. A skin covering is stretched across part of the cave entrance, not closing it completely, but reducing the wind. Others examine the roof and walls for dripping water. A cave may seem like a perfect protection from winter, yet stone holds cold, moisture gathers in cracks. Wind can move through narrow passages. Smoke can build up if the entrance is sealed too tightly. The group must find a balance, keep the warmth inside, let the smoke escape, keep enough air moving for the fire, avoid turning the shelter into a dark room full of coughing people, which would be a rather poor improvement over standing outside. You help carry a bundle of wood. The branches feel rough and cold against your hands. Some are thin enough to break over your knee, others are dense and heavy. In open Ice Age landscapes, wood may be limited, so fuel is collected whenever possible. Dried dung, peat, brush, and animal bone can also be burned in regions where trees are scarce. A small pile of bones lies near the hearth. Many have already been cracked for marrow. Some may now serve one final purpose as fuel. This careful use of resources reflects a mainstream truth about prehistoric survival. Early humans adapted to cold not through one invention, but through many connected skills. They made fitted clothing, controlled fire, selected sheltered camps, cooperated in groups, followed seasonal animals, and carried knowledge across generations. No single tool defeated winter. Survival came from a system. The first snow begins in the afternoon. It falls lightly at first, settling on the grass and darkening the rocks. Then the wind strengthens. Snow moves sideways across the valley, hiding the distant river and erasing the tracks you followed earlier. You stand near the entrance and feel the temperature drop. The cold touches your cheeks, fingers, and the inside of your nose. It is not yet dangerous for a brief moment, but prolonged exposure can weaken the body. Wet clothing is especially risky. Animal skin garments must be prepared, repaired, and kept as dry as possible. Inside the cave, one person works on a hide. The skin has been scraped with a stone tool to remove tissue and fat. It may be stretched, softened, smoked, rubbed with oils, or treated with substances from the animal itself. Hide. Preparation requires time and skill. Poorly prepared skin can become stiff, rot, or lose its insulating value. You notice the scraper in the worker's hand. It is broad and carefully shaped, with an edge suited for pushing across the hide. Stone scrapers are common finds at many Paleolithic sites, and they give archaeologists direct evidence of tasks connected with clothing and shelter. Nearby, another person uses a bone needle. The needle is small, polished, and pierced with an eye. Thread made from sinew passes through it. A torn seam in a fur covering is pulled together with neat stitches. This simple object represents a major achievement. Bone needles allowed people to create clothing that fitted around arms, legs, and feet. Loose hides provide warmth, but fitted layers trap heat more effectively and make movement easier. In extreme cold, such improvements could save lives. A quirky detail is that some prehistoric people may have used beads, animal teeth, shells, and small carved objects sewn onto clothing. Archaeologists have found ornaments positioned around human burials in patterns that suggest they once decorated garments. Hats or bags, even in difficult climates. Clothing could express identity. A warm coat might also carry hundreds or even thousands of small beads. You might imagine repairing all of that after one bead catches on a branch. Prehistoric patience was clearly a renewable resource. Scholars remain divided on how elaborate everyday Ice Age clothing was in different regions. Some reconstructions show carefully tailored layers similar in principle to those used by later Arctic peoples. Others warn that preserved evidence is limited, and that clothing styles probably varied greatly with climate. Materials, culture, and season. The snowstorm grows stronger. Wind presses against the hide screen. Fine powder enters through small gaps and melts near the fire. The people move closer together. Children sit between adults, wrapped in fur. An older person checks their hands and faces for signs of dangerous cold. Another rubs warmth into a child's fingers. Body heat is shared naturally in the crowded shelter. There is no formal leader giving orders. The group responds through habit. Someone watches the entrance. Someone tends the fire. Someone repairs clothing. Someone prepares food. Someone comforts the youngest child. Cooperation turns the cave into a living shelter rather than an empty hole in the stone. Outside, the landscape disappears. You can no longer see the ridge, the river, or the path into the valley. Only white movement fills the entrance. This loss of visibility creates a particular kind of fear. A storm can trap the group for days. Hunters cannot easily follow animals. Gatherers cannot search safely. Firewood may run low. If someone is caught far from shelter, familiar landmarks can vanish within minutes. Transportation depends on walking, and walking becomes dangerous when snow hides holes, ice, and steep ground. There are no roads to follow and no rescue team waiting beyond the hill. Yet the people do not waste energy worrying aloud. They prepare. Dried meat is counted. Roots are moved away from damp ground. A stone blade is sharpened. The hearth is cleared so the fire burns more efficiently. The oldest members begin to speak softly. Perhaps they describe another winter, many years earlier, when snow covered the valley for several days. They remember which slope remained protected from wind. They remember where dead wood could be found after the storm. They remember how reindeer gathered near exposed ground. Memory is a form of shelter. Researchers continue to question how prehistoric groups planned for seasonal shortages. Some sites suggest food was dried, smoked, frozen, or stored in pits. Fat could be rendered and kept. Meat might remain preserved naturally in cold conditions. However, storage methods probably differed widely, and many containers made from skin, bark, wood, or woven fibers have not survived. You listen as the wind moves around the cave. Its sound rises and falls like distant breathing. The fire cracks gently. Warmth spreads only a short distance, so everyone stays close. Fur brushes against your arm. The stone beneath you remains cold, but layers of grass and hide make it bearable. Today, you can turn a small dial and expect an entire room to become warm. Here, every branch represents time spent gathering. Every spark is protected. Every piece of clothing contains hours of scraping, cutting, sewing and repair. Winter is feared because it removes choices. It limits movement. It hides food. It weakens the careless. But it also draws the group together. As evening settles, the storm continues beyond the entrance. Inside, the fire remains steady. Children grow sleepy. Tools rest beside the wall. The elders speak in low voices, and the younger adults listen. You feel the shelter holding its small circle of warmth against the enormous cold for tonight. That circle is enough. By morning, the storm has weakened. Snow still drifts past the cave entrance, but the wind no longer presses against the hide screen with the same force. The fire has survived through the night. Its coals glow beneath a covering of ash, and the people around you begin waking one by one. Outside, the valley is almost unrecognizable. The old tracks have vanished. Stones that stood above the grass are now rounded white shapes. The river lies beneath ice and fresh snow. Farther away, the hills appear smooth and pale beneath a quiet sky. The group cannot remain inside forever. Food is limited. Firewood must be gathered. More importantly, the animals must be found again. In this Ice Age landscape, human movement is closely connected to the movement of herds. Reindeer travel between feeding grounds. Bison search for exposed grass. Wild horses cross open country in groups. Mammoths move through broad valleys and steppe environments, following water. Plants, and familiar seasonal routes. The people beside you do not control these animals, they study them. They remember where herds passed in previous winters. They notice which slopes lose snow first. They understand that strong winds can expose grass on ridges, drawing grazing animals toward those places. This knowledge shapes transportation, camp location, hunting plans, and the timing of migration. A group that loses contact with the herds may face hunger. A group that follows too closely may waste energy or frighten animals away. You step outside with several hunters. Cold air enters your lungs. Snow compresses beneath your feet with a dry crunch. Everyone wears layered animal skins, fur coverings, and simple fitted garments sewn with sinew. Wooden spears rest across shoulders. Stone blades and bone points are carried in skin bags. No one moves quickly. The storm has hidden familiar dangers. Ice may cover holes between rocks. Snow may conceal steep drops or frozen pools. Each step is tested. You follow the edge of the slope toward an exposed ridge. At first, the land appears empty. Then one hunter kneels. A shallow mark breaks the smooth surface of the snow. Another lies a short distance ahead. The prints are wide and divided, with snow pressed firmly around their edges. Bison. The hunter studies them without speaking. You notice that the tracks are partly filled with loose powder. They were made after the heaviest snowfall, but not very recently. The direction suggests that the animals moved toward the eastern ridge, where the wind has cleared some of the ground. Tracking is more than following footprints. Early humans observed droppings, broken plants, rubbed bark, hair, feeding marks, and changes in bird behavior. They noticed whether hoofprints were sharp or softened by the wind. They compared the depth of tracks to the weight of the animal and the condition of the snow. They also learned the habits of each species. Reindeer may bunch together during migration. Wild horses often rely on alert individuals at the edge of a herd. Bison can turn suddenly when threatened. Mammoths likely lived in social groups centered on females and young, much like modern elephants. Understanding these patterns allowed hunters to predict movement. You continue across the ridge. Below, a line of dark shapes appears against the snow. A small herd of bison stands near a patch of exposed grass. Their heavy coats hang around their shoulders. Steam rises from their nostrils. One animal scrapes snow aside with a hoof, while another lifts its head and watches the slope. The hunters stop immediately. Distance matters. Wind direction matters. The position of the herd matters. A careless approach could send the animals running long before anyone came within range. Worse, a frightened bison might charge if it felt trapped. The hunters lower themselves behind a bank of snow. You lie beside them and feel cold pressing through your clothing. The smell of damp fur and frozen earth surrounds you. No one complains. The group watches. An older hunter points toward the lead animal. Its ears turn often. Its head remains raised longer than the others. This animal's alert and may warn the herd. Another hunter studies the edge of the group, where a younger bison feeds slightly apart. A plan begins through gestures. Two people will move along the lower slope, staying out of sight. Others will remain behind the ridge. The goal is not to rush directly into the herd. It is to influence movement, guiding the animals towards the ground where spears can be used more effectively. Coordinated hunting is a mainstream feature of prehistoric survival. Large animals often required several people working together. Hunters used terrain, wind, noise, barriers, and knowledge of animal behavior. They may have driven prey toward narrow passages, marshes, riverbanks, steep slopes, or waiting companions. Still, hunting plans were dangerous and uncertain. The herd could turn, the wind could shift, a hunter could slip, a spear could miss. Archaeologists continue examining evidence about how often prehistoric groups hunted mammoths and other very large animals directly. Some sites contain mammoth bones beside stone tools, suggesting butchery and possibly hunting. In other cases, People may have scavenged animals that died naturally or became trapped. Researchers remain cautious because bones alone do not always reveal how an animal died. You watch the hunters move into position, the bison continue feeding. For a long while, nothing changes. This patience is part of the work. Hunting does not consist only of movement. Much of it is waiting in cold grass, watching ears, tails, breathing, and the direction of the wind. Today, waiting 5 minutes for food can feel like a serious inconvenience. Here, a hunter may remain still for hours because one careless step could waste an entire day. A raven circles above the herd. Its dark wings stand out against the snow. Ravens often follow large animals and predators, searching for scraps. Prehistoric people may have watched scavenger birds as clues to carcasses or animal movement. A quirky detail is that ravens and humans may have benefited from observing one another. Ravens can notice dead animals from the air, while humans can open thick hides and break bones, leaving edible remains. Some researchers have suggested that this loose relationship may have deep prehistoric roots. Although proving such behaviour archaeologically is difficult, the wind shifts slightly. One bison raises its head. The hunters freeze. The animal faces the ridge, listening. Its dark eyes search the snow. For several breaths, the valley becomes completely still. Then the bison lowers its head again. The group waits longer. Finally, 2 hunters begin moving along the lower slope. They remain hidden behind scattered rocks. One carries a bundle of branches, perhaps to create movement or sound at the right moment. The others prepare their spears. You feel tension, but it is controlled. No one seeks excitement. The purpose is food, hide, bone, sinew, and fat. A successful hunt could support the entire group. A large animal provides far more than meat. Hide can become clothing, bedding, bags, or shelter material. Bone can become needles, points, handles, and fuel. Sinew can become thread. Fat provides energy and can assist with lighting, cooking, and hide treatment. Even the tendons and horns may be useful. Nothing is taken casually. A sound rises below. One hunter strikes wood against stone. The bison lift their heads. A second sound comes from the opposite side. The herd begins moving toward the narrow ground near the ridge. At first, they walk, crowded close together. Then one animal trots, and the others follow. The waiting hunters rise. Spears are held ready, but the distance remains too great. The herd turns sooner than expected. Snow flies around their legs as they move across the valley and away from the pass. No one follows recklessly. The hunters watch the direction of escape. The plan has failed, but useful information remains. They now know where the herd is travelling. They have seen its size. They have noticed a younger animal at the edge and an older one moving more slowly. Failure becomes preparation for the next attempt. The hunters return to the tracks. One person marks the direction with a broken branch, another studies where the animals crossed a low patch of ground. The group may return later, perhaps with more hunters, perhaps after choosing a better place. You begin walking back toward the cave. Along the way, you find reindeer tracks crossing the bison trail. Farther ahead, mammoth footprints form deep bowls in the snow, each one broad enough to hold both of your feet. The animals themselves are gone, but their presence fills the landscape, and you realize that early humans did not simply fear animals. They depended on them, they respected them, they learned from them. The herds carried food, material, direction, and seasonal knowledge. To lose sight of them was to lose the rhythm of the land. As the cave smoke appears in the distance, you understand why so many eyes were always watching the horizon. The cave smoke fades behind you as the group follows the old tracks toward a lower valley. Snow still covers the ground, but the sky has cleared. Sunlight rests softly on the eastern slopes, revealing dark lines of exposed grass where the wind has swept the surface clean. The hunters move at an even pace. carrying wooden spears, stone tools, hide bags, and the quiet knowledge gathered during yesterday's failed attempt. You walk among them. The bison herd has moved farther south, and the group hopes to find a better route before evening. Yet hunting is not the only reason for this journey. One of the elders remembers another band of people who sometimes camps beyond the ridge. They may know where the reindeer have gone. They may have good stone for tools. They may also prefer not to share either piece of information. In the upper Paleolithic world, human communities are usually small. A local group might contain several families, children, older people, and adults connected through kinship, partnership, and long familiarity. Such bands cannot always remain isolated. People need contact with others for marriage, exchange, shared hunting, information, and support during difficult seasons. A group that never meets outsiders risks becoming too small. A group that trusts everyone risks losing food, tools, or safe territory. So you move through a world shaped by both cooperation and caution. There are no marked borders. No wooden signs announce that a valley belongs to one community. Territory is remembered through rivers, caves, hunting paths, burial places, and stories. A certain spring may be visited by several groups at different times of year. A sheltered pass may be known to everyone in the region. Conflict can begin when resources become scarce, but contact can also bring friendship, trade, and new knowledge. The people around you understand these possibilities. They do not march in a tight formation. They spread slightly across the slope, watching the ground and the horizon. One hunter studies the wind. Another checks the line of trees below. The oldest member pauses often, searching for familiar signs. You notice a branch bent in an unusual way. A strip of bark has been removed from one side, farther ahead. 3 stones have been placed together near the path. These marks may be natural, but the group studies them carefully. Prehistoric people could leave traces for one another using broken branches, stacked stones, footprints, pigment, or objects positioned in visible places. Such signals rarely survive clearly enough for archaeologists to interpret, but simple wayfinding would have been useful in landscapes crossed repeatedly. The valley narrows. You smell smoke before you see its source. It is faint, mixed with cold air and the scent of pine. The group slows. A younger hunter moves ahead, crouching near a low ridge. After several moments, the hunter returns and makes a small gesture. People are nearby. No one raises a weapon, but spears remain in hand. You follow the others toward the crest. Below, beside a stand of trees, another camp rests near a shallow rock shelter. A hide screen hangs between wooden poles. Smoke rises from 2 small hearths. Children sit near the fire while adults work with stone and bone. The scene looks familiar. That familiarity is comforting and unsettling at the same time. These strangers wear animal skins much like your group. They carry similar tools. They know the same cold, yet their faces, ornaments, gestures, and speech may be different. One person in the camp notices movement on the ridge. The camp becomes still. Adults rise. Children move closer to the shelter. A dog-like animal near the fire gives a low warning sound. Though the exact role and timing of early dogs varies across prehistoric periods and regions, for a few quiet moments, both groups simply watch. This is where fear becomes social. A wolf usually gives clear signs through posture, distance, and movement. Another human can hide intention. Strangers may offer food, information, or partnership. They may also compete for the same herd, cave, or water source. The elder beside you steps forward alone. Hands remain visible. The elder calls out in a calm voice. The words are unfamiliar to you, though some sounds seem close to those spoken in your own camp. Language may vary between neighbouring communities, but gestures, tone, shared objects, and repeated contact can help people understand one another. A person from the lower camp answers. The exchange is slow. No one approaches quickly. Then your elder places a small object on the ground and steps back. It is a piece of dark flint. The other group waits, then sends one adult forward. That person examines the stone and leaves a polished bone point in return. Exchange begins without a formal market, written agreement, or enthusiastic discussion about competitive pricing. Archaeological evidence shows that raw materials sometimes travelled hundreds of kilometres from their original sources. Marine shells have been discovered far inland. Obsidian, flint, amber, pigments, and decorative objects appear at sites distant from the places where they formed naturally. This suggests networks of movement and exchange connecting communities across broad regions. The people carrying these materials may have travelled themselves, passed objects from group to group, or exchanged them during seasonal gatherings. You descend the slope slowly. The two camps remain separate at first. Adults meet in the open ground between them. Spears are placed nearby rather than held ready. Food is offered in small amounts. One woman from the lower camp holds a string of pierced animal teeth. Another person wears shells sewn along the edge of a hide covering. The shells must have come from a distant coast or from people who knew people who had once travelled there. One small and fascinating detail is that some prehistoric ornaments were made in remarkably consistent styles across large areas. Similar beads, pendants, and carved forms may have helped strangers recognise shared customs, distant connections, or group identity. You can think of them as a quiet prehistoric introduction. No glowing profile, no printed card, only a shell, a tooth, or a pattern that says something about where you belong. Children begin watching one another. At first they stay close to the adults, then one child rolls a small bone across the snow. Another sends it back. The game needs no translation. Nearby, toolmakers compare stone. The flint from your camp fractures cleanly, producing sharp flakes. The other group has a pale stone with different qualities. One skilled craftsperson demonstrates a method of striking the core. The angle is slightly different from the technique you watched in the cave. Knowledge moves with the object. This matters greatly. Contact between groups can spread hunting methods, tool designs, sewing techniques, stories, ornaments, and information about distant landscapes. Human survival improves not only when individuals learn, but when communities share discoveries. Experts remain divided over how peaceful or violent relations between prehistoric groups usually were. Injuries found on ancient skeletons show that interpersonal violence existed. Some sites may reflect conflict or deliberate killing, yet evidence of long-distance exchange, shared styles, care for injured people, and repeated gatherings also points toward extensive cooperation. The past does not offer one simple answer. Early humans could be generous and suspicious, welcoming and territorial, much like people in later times. You sit near the edge of the second camp, a meal is being prepared, strips of meat warm over the fire, roots are placed beside heated stones, smoke drifts beneath the rock shelter and carries the smell of fat, damp wood, and earth. The two elders compare gestures that describe the valley. One points south and imitates the movement of antlers, reindeer. The other draws a line in the snow, then taps a narrow pass between two marks. The herd crossed there recently. This information may save your group hours of searching. In return, your hunters describe the bison seen near the eastern ridge. Both groups now know more than either knew alone. Transportation remains limited to walking, carrying, and perhaps dragging loads over snow on simple frames or hides. Information can travel faster than supplies, because a remembered route weighs nothing. As afternoon light begins to fade, the groups prepare to separate. There is no grand farewell. A few tools change hands. A child keeps the small bone used in the game. One adult from the other camp may travel with your group for part of the route, perhaps visiting relatives or joining the hunt. You climb back toward the ridge. The fear of strangers has not disappeared, it remains sensible. Trust must be tested through behavior, memory, and repeated contact. Yet another fear has weakened. The landscape is no longer known only by your own small group. Beyond the hills, other fires are burning, other people are watching the weather, following the herds, teaching children, repairing hides, and remembering paths through the snow. The ancient world still feels vast, but it no longer feels empty. The path back toward the cave follows the edge of a frozen stream. You walk beside the visiting hunter from the neighbouring camp, while the two groups slowly leave one another behind. Snow creaks beneath your feet. Thin ice near the bank gives a soft cracking sound as water moves underneath. The sky has turned pale gold, and the shadows of pine trees stretch across the valley floor. No one speaks very much. Travel takes effort, and the cold encourages silence. Yet information is already moving between the people around you. A gesture points toward the southern pass where reindeer were recently seen. A few sounds describe the size of the herd. Another gesture warns of unstable ice near a bend in the river. You begin to understand that in this world, knowledge is carried inside a people. There are no maps folded inside bags, no written hunting guides wait beside the fire, no carved sign lists which plants are safe to eat and which ones will leave everyone regretting the experiment. Memory performs all of these tasks. The social structure of a prehistoric group depends heavily on shared experience. Younger adults may have greater strength and speed, but elders can remember old migration routes, unusual winters, distant water sources, animal behaviour, and the consequences of past mistakes. Age does not guarantee wisdom, of course. Human beings have probably always included confident people with questionable ideas. Still, surviving many seasons gives someone a library of practical observations. When you return to the cave, the storm clouds have disappeared. Smoke rises calmly from the entrance. Children run forward to meet the hunters, searching their faces for signs of success. There is no large animal being carried home, but news has returned instead. The visiting hunter is welcomed cautiously, then offered a place near the fire. Food is shared. The meal is modest: roasted roots, dried meat, and a little marrow pass from hand to hand. The stranger eats slowly and watches the group. Afterward, tools are set aside, children settle beneath hides, and the oldest people move closer to the hearth. This is when teaching begins, not as a formal lesson, not with everyone seated politely in rows. It begins with a question, a gesture, and a story. An elder points toward the cave entrance and draws a curved line in the ash. The line represents the river. Small stones become hills. A bone fragment marks the narrow pass where animals cross. You lean closer. The elder describes the winter from many years earlier. Snow came sooner that season. Reindeer avoided the usual valley. The group followed old tracks into higher ground and found no food. Then one hunter noticed ravens gathering beyond a ridge. The birds led them toward a dead mammoth, partly frozen, its meat still usable. The account is practical, but it is also shaped like a story. There is a beginning, there is a mistake, there is observation, there is survival. Oral tradition allows information to remain memorable. A plain instruction may be forgotten, but a story about cold, hunger, birds, and an unexpected carcass can remain in the mind for years. Repetition strengthens it. Rhythm helps. Gesture gives the lesson a physical shape. Researchers widely accept that spoken language and social learning were essential to Upper Paleolithic life. Even though the exact sounds and structures of ancient languages are lost, complex hunting, tool production, migration, childcare, and cooperation would have been far more difficult without detailed communication. You watch a child repeat the elder's gesture for raven. The hand opens and closes like a wing. Another child points toward the imaginary ridge. The lesson has already begun moving into another generation. The visiting hunter then speaks. The accent is different, and some words are unfamiliar. Still, The group understands much of the meaning through shared sounds, expression, and movement. The visitor describes a frozen pond beyond the southern hills where reindeer recently gathered. The ice is dangerous near one side because warm water rises from beneath the ground. An elder interrupts gently and asks for the warning to be repeated. The visitor traces the pond in ash. Then a dark stone marks the unsafe edge. Everyone studies the pattern. One overlooked but revealing detail from prehistoric sites is the presence of objects that seem to have been handled repeatedly over long periods. Polished stones, engraved bones, carved animals, and worn ornaments may have served as teaching aids. Personal keepsakes, symbols, or story prompts, their exact meanings are rarely certain, but the wear on them shows that they mattered enough to be carried and touched again and again. The elder near you takes a small carved object from a skin pouch. It resembles a horse, though the shape is simple. The back is smooth from years of handling. A line marks the neck. 2 shallow cuts suggest legs. The object passes around the fire. Each person touches it carefully. Perhaps it represents a particular herd. Perhaps it belongs to a family story. Perhaps it is simply beautiful. Archaeologists continue to debate how portable art functioned in prehistoric societies. Some pieces may have carried spiritual meaning. Others may have marked identity, taught animal features, recorded memory, or served several purposes at once. The uncertainty does not make the object less powerful. You hold it for a moment. The surface feels warm from other hands. The elder begins another story, this time about horses crossing a river during spring melt. The lesson concerns timing. Crossing too early brings thin ice. Crossing too late brings deep water. The group must watch the colour of the river, the sound beneath the surface, and the behaviour of animals near the bank. The children listen while playing with scraps of hide. Their attention seems uneven, but they notice more than they appear to. One child copies the shape of the horse in the ash. Another imitates the sound of breaking ice, causing a few quiet smiles around the fire. Learning is woven into ordinary life. Children watch adults sharpen stone, prepare skins, divide food, carry infants, and tend the hearth. They practice with smaller tools, they gather nearby plants, they are corrected when necessary. But much of their education comes from observation and participation. You notice that elders teach more than survival techniques. They also teach customs, who receives food first when supplies are low, how visitors are greeted, where tools are placed, which places should not be disturbed, how the dead are remembered. Culture lives in these repeated choices. Some researchers suggest that elders became increasingly important as human lifespans lengthened, allowing more knowledge to accumulate within communities. Others caution that estimating age from prehistoric remains is difficult, and that the role of older adults probably varied greatly between groups. Even so, the value of memory is easy to see. An experienced person can warn others before danger appears. A hunter who remembers an animal's behavior can avoid a wasted chase. A gatherer who knows when roots become bitter can protect the group from sickness. An elder who recalls another group's customs can prevent an unnecessary conflict. Outside, the temperature falls. The visiting hunter prepares to sleep near the entrance, wrapped in a thick hide. A younger adult takes the first watch. The fire settles into a steady glow before the group grows quiet. The older storyteller speaks once more. This story is slower. It concerns a time before anyone present was born, when the valley held more trees and the winters were shorter. Animals followed different paths then. A cave farther north was used during summer. The entrance later collapsed, and the group stopped returning. The story holds environmental memory. Landscapes change over generations. Rivers alter course. Forests advance or retreat. Familiar shelters disappear. Oral traditions may preserve traces of such changes long after the first witnesses are gone. You listen to the elder's voice soften. The children become still. Firelight moves across the cave wall, making the red pigments seem to shift. Wind passes gently outside. Somewhere in the valley, A wolf calls, but no one reacts with alarm. The sound is known, the valley is remembered. The night has been explained through stories carried by those who lived through many nights before. You rest beside the hearth, surrounded by voices that hold maps, warnings, customs, and old winters, in a world without writing. Forgetting can be dangerous, remembering becomes a form of protection. The elder's final words settle into the cave like warm smoke. Around you, the fire burns low and steady. Children lie beneath folded hides, though not all of them are asleep. One small face remains turned toward the hearth, watching an older hand place the carved horse back into its pouch. Another child traces a line through the ash, copying the path of the river from the story. By morning, those quiet lessons begin to take physical form. The sky outside is clear. Frost covers the stones near the entrance, and sunlight reaches only a short distance into the shelter. Adults prepare for the day while the children move among them, carrying small bundles, gathering scraps of bark, and watching every task. In this prehistoric world, childhood is not separated from survival. There are no schools, printed lessons, or fixed schedules. Learning happens through imitation, practice, correction, and repeated participation. Children remain close to parents, siblings, grandparents, and other trusted adults. They observe how food is prepared, how tools are handled, how weather is read, and how people move safely through the landscape. The youngest children are protected, but they are also included. A toddler sits near the fire, wrapped in soft fur, turning a smooth bone in both hands. An older child helps carry dry grass for tinder. Another follows a woman toward the riverbank to search for roots beneath the snow. You walk with them. The cold air feels sharp, but the wind is gentle. Snow has thinned along the southern slope, exposing dark soil and patches of grass. The children step carefully, placing their feet where the adults step. This is partly imitation and partly safety. Familiar tracks show where the ground is firm. One child carries a pointed digging stick. It is shorter than the adult version and light enough for small hands. The tip has been hardened near the fire, though it is worn from use. When the group reaches a cluster of dry stems, the woman kneels and brushes away snow. She does not simply pull the root from the soil. First, she points to the leaves, then she touches the stem. She breaks a small piece and lets the child smell it. The scent is earthy and faintly bitter. Many plants resemble one another, and mistakes can cause illness. Knowledge of roots, berries, seeds, bark, and leaves is therefore essential. Plant gathering is not an easy or secondary task. It requires memory of seasons, soils, habitats, preparation methods, and dangerous lookalikes. The child copies the woman carefully. The digging stick enters the soil at an angle. Frozen earth resists at first after several attempts. A small root emerges, covered with mud. The child smiles. The reward is modest, but the lesson is large. Human survival during the Upper Paleolithic depended on children learning these skills gradually. Archaeological evidence shows that early communities used a wide range of tools for cutting, scraping, piercing, grinding, and hunting. Those skills required years of practice. A person did not suddenly become an expert hunter or toolmaker upon reaching adulthood. Learning began early. Farther along the slope, two older children study animal tracks. The prints belong to a hare. They form a repeating pattern across the hoof, with larger rear feet landing ahead of the smaller front feet. One child follows the trail too quickly and loses it among wind-blown marks. An older hunter kneels beside them. He does not point directly to the next print. Instead, he asks them to look at the direction of the grass, the shelter of the rocks, and the small dark pellets near a bush. The children search again. This time, they find the trail. You notice how patient the teaching is. The adult allows mistakes that are safe. A lost track becomes a lesson. A poorly shaped tool becomes practice. A bundle tied too loosely can be retied. Children gain judgment because they are permitted to try. Today, many people learn through instructions given before the task begins. Here, the task itself is often the instruction. Back near the cave, a young girl sits beside a toolmaker. A small piece of flint rests on a hide between them. The adult demonstrates how to strike the stone core with a hammerstone. A thin flake breaks away. The sound is clean and sharp. The girl tries. Her first strike produces nothing. The second removes a thick, uneven fragment. The adult turns the stone and shows her the angle again. Flint knapping requires an understanding of force, shape, and fracture. The toolmaker must know where to strike and how hard. A careless blow may shatter valuable stone or send a sharp flake into the hand. The girl's third attempt creates a usable edge. It is not elegant, but it can cut fibre. One fascinating clue from prehistoric archaeology is that researchers sometimes find badly made or unusually small stone tools near camps. Some archaeologists interpret these as the work of beginners, perhaps children practicing beside skilled adults. The irregular flakes preserve mistakes that may have occurred thousands of years ago. They are quiet reminders that mastery once began with clumsy hands. Specialists continue to examine how prehistoric children participated in daily layers. Footprints preserved in caves, handprints on walls, small tools, and patterns of wear suggest that young people were present in many spaces once assumed to belong only to adults. Some researchers argue that children may even have helped create cave art, while others remain cautious about assigning age from hand size alone inside the shelter. Another lesson begins. An older boy helps prepare an animal skin. The hide has already been stretched. He uses a rounded stone scraper, pushing it slowly along the surface. The tool catches on a rough patch. An adult takes his wrist and changes the angle. Scraping hides is tiring work. It strengthens the hands and shoulders. It also demands attention because the skin must be cleaned without being cut through. The boy continues. Smoke from the hearth mixes with the smell of fat and damp hide. The work is repetitive, almost soothing. Scrape. Pause. Turn the skin. Scrape again. Near the entrance. Younger children practice throwing short sticks toward a mark in the snow. No sharp points are attached. The target is a bundle of grass tied with cord. Most throws fall short. One stick spins sideways and lands behind the thrower, causing gentle laughter from the adults. The children try again. Accuracy matters later, but for now they are learning balance, distance, and movement. They also learn cooperation. One child retrieves the sticks, another resets the target, a third waits for a turn, though not always patiently, human nature it seems. Arrived long before organised cues. As the day grows warmer, the children accompany adults toward the river. They collect dry branches trapped against stones. They learn which wood burns quickly and which lasts longer. They test the ice with long poles before stepping close. The visitor from the neighbouring group points toward the dangerous side of the frozen pond described the previous night. The children repeat the warning. Dark water below. Thin ice above, do not cross near the reeds. The words and gestures become fixed through repetition. Not every lesson concerns danger. One child finds a shell ornament in the visitor's pouch and studies its smooth surface. Another shows a bead made from bone. They compare them, turning each object in the light. Identity, beauty, and curiosity are part of childhood too. Children may sing, play, imitate animals, create small figures, and invent games using stones, bones, sticks, and footprints. Play helps them practice adult skills, but it also gives pleasure. Prehistoric life is difficult, yet difficulty does not erase laughter. By evening, the cave fills again with the familiar sounds of work. Stone taps against stone, a needle passes through hide, roots roast beside the fire. Children repeat the day's lessons in fragments. One copies the hare's movement, another demonstrates the correct angle for digging. The girl with the flint shows her uneven cutting edge to anyone willing to admire it. The elders watch quietly. They know that knowledge survives only when it is given away. The children will one day remember where the roots grow, how thin ice sounds, which tracks belong to hair, and how to protect a spark from winter wind. They will carry these lessons into valleys the elders may never see. You rest beside the fire and listen to the soft mixture of teaching, play, and tired voices in this ancient world. The future is not written on paper. It's walking through the cave on small, uncertain feet. The small, uncertain feet of the children leave fresh prints outside the cave the next morning for several days. The weather remains calm, sunlight returns to the valley, and the snow along the lower slopes begins to soften. Water drips from dark rocks near the entrance. The frozen stream speaks more loudly beneath its thinning surface, sending a low murmur through the cold air. You walk beyond the shelter with a small group gathering wood and checking animal trails. The sky looks harmless. Pale clouds drift above the western hills. Reindeer tracks cross the valley floor. Ravens move between distant pines. Nothing appears unusual, yet the older people watch the horizon more often than the young. Experience has taught them that calm weather can change quickly throughout human evolution. Climate did not remain steady. Early humans endured repeated ice age cycles, warmer intervals, severe cold phases, and long dry periods. In Europe, Neanderthals and later modern humans adapted to snowy valleys, open tundra, forests and frozen plains in Africa and other warmer regions. Communities also faced serious environmental pressure when rainfall declined or lakes shrank and familiar grasslands became dry. Climate shaped almost every decision. It influenced where people camped, which animals they followed, when they moved, and whether a familiar route remained safe. A valley rich in food one year might become empty the next. A river could flood after sudden warmth or freeze earlier than expected. There are no permanent roads through this world. Travel follows rivers, ridges, animal paths, coastlines, and remembered landmarks. People carry what they can on their backs, in hide bags, or on simple dragging frames. Children walk when they are able. Infants are wrapped close to adults. Tools, food, fuel, and bedding must all move with the group. You feel the first change in the wind. It comes from the north and carries a colder smell. Sharp and dry, the elder beside you stops gathering branches. A few birds rise from the trees. The clouds above the western hills begin to thicken. Their lower edges turn grey. Light drains from the valley. Although the day is not yet old, the group turns back toward the cave. No one runs. Running wastes energy and increases the risk of slipping on ice. Instead, everyone walks quickly and steadily. Bundles of wood are tied more tightly, children are brought closer. One adult checks the river route, then chooses higher ground. The first snow arrives before you reach the shelter. Large flakes fall slowly, melting against your skin within minutes. They become smaller and harder. Wind pushes them across the slope. This is not the same storm you experienced earlier. That storm announced itself gradually. This one moves fast. The people around you respond through habit. A hunter leads from the front. Another stays behind the children. The visitor from the neighbouring group points toward a shallow depression that should be avoided because drifting snow can hide its depth. You keep your eyes on the person ahead. The cave entrance remains visible, but only as a dark mark beneath the cliff. Distance becomes difficult to judge when snow removes detail from the land. A slope that looked gentle in sunlight now appears flat and endless. Near the river, a cracking sound rolls beneath the ice. The group moves farther uphill. Rapid temperature changes can weaken frozen surfaces. Snow may hide thin sections, especially near springs, reeds, or moving water. The warning taught beside the fire now becomes practical. Dark water below, thin ice above. Do not cross near the reeds. The children repeat the route with their bodies, staying close to the rocks. By the time you reach the cave, the wind has become strong enough to pull at your clothing. Snow gathers in the fur around your feet. Your fingers feel stiff around the bundle of branches. Inside, the shelter is dim and warm. The firekeeper has already prepared extra tinder. Wet outer skins are removed and placed where they can dry without catching fire. Snow is brushed from hair, shoulders, and tools. A well-supported fact from prehistoric research is that early humans survived environmental instability through flexibility. They moved between habitats, changed food sources, developed clothing, improved shelters, and adjusted hunting strategies. Their advantage did not come from controlling nature. It came from recognizing change and responding before conditions became impossible. You sit near the hearth and hold your hands toward the heat. The sudden storm continues outside. Wind forces fine snow through gaps near the entrance. Someone secures the hide screen with stones. Another checks the stored roots and dried meat. The group may remain trapped for a day, perhaps longer. Yet weather threatens more than immediate comfort. If heavy snow covers grazing ground, animals may leave the valley. Reindeer can dig through snow, but deep crust makes feeding difficult. Bison seek wind-swept ridges, horses move toward exposed grass, predators follow weakened animals. Humans must decide whether to remain near shelter or follow the herds into unfamiliar country. That decision is rarely simple. Moving too soon can lead into dangerous weather. Waiting too long can mean losing the animals entirely. The elders discuss the problem in low voices. One draws the valley in ash. Another places stones along the southern route. The visiting hunter points east, toward a forested slope where animals sometimes gather after storms. Different memories compete. One person recalls finding reindeer beyond the pass. Another remembers an avalanche blocking that same route. Some researchers propose that abrupt climate shifts encouraged greater cooperation and wider social networks among prehistoric groups. Since people with contacts across several regions had more options during shortages. Others caution that environmental stress could also increase competition over food, water, and shelter. The evidence suggests that both responses occurred at different times and places. You listen as the debate around the hearth remains calm. No one can know what the animals will do. The group must combine signs, memory, and judgment. A curious clue from Ice Age archaeology comes from layers of pollen, charcoal, animal bone, and sediment preserved in caves and lake beds. These layers can reveal sudden changes in vegetation and temperature, in some places. Forests gave way to grassland within relatively short geological periods. Human occupation also appears and disappears from certain sites as conditions changed. To the people living through it, there was no geological chart. There was only the quiet realization that familiar trees were becoming fewer, that water stood lower each summer, or that animals no longer returned on the expected day. The storm continues through the afternoon. Children remain near the rear of the cave, shaping clay like mud and drawing lines in ash. Adults repair cord, straighten spear shafts and sort stone flakes. Forced stillness becomes useful work. Outside, the wind carries a distant rumble. Snow slips from a ledge above the valley, falling in a heavy sheet. It is far from the shelter, but everyone hears it. The cave grows quiet. An avalanche, rockfall, flood, or wildfire can transform the land without warning. Prehistoric people had little ability to stop such events. Their protection came from choosing camps carefully, reading signs, remembering dangerous places, and leaving when necessary. You might wonder whether constant uncertainty made life unbearable. Perhaps sometimes it did, but fear becomes easier to carry when it is shared. One person watches the fire, another studies the sky, Another remembers the eastern route. Another comforts a child disturbed by the noise. No one must understand everything alone. Toward evening, the wind weakens. The snow still falls, but the air beyond the entrance has grown quieter. A hunter steps outside briefly and returns with white powder covering the shoulders. The ridge remains visible. The path is not buried completely. Tomorrow, scouts will examine the valley. They will look for tracks, exposed grass, and signs that the herds have moved. The group may stay, it may travel south. It may divide for a short time and search in several directions. For tonight, no decisions required. You lie near the fire beneath a dry hide. The storm passes slowly across the ancient landscape, changing paths, covering tracks, and reminding everyone that the world is never fixed. The greatest skill is not predicting every change, it is remaining ready to change with it. By dawn, the storm has moved east. The valley is quiet beneath fresh snow. Clouds still cover the sky, but the wind has weakened to a faint movement along the cave mouth. Inside, the fire rests low in the hearth, reduced to a red glow beneath grey ash. You wake before most of the group. For a moment, the cave seems silent. Then you hear soft breathing, the rustle of fur, and the careful movement of the person responsible for the hearth. The firekeeper kneels. A thin stick opens a path through the ash. Red light appears. Dry grass is placed above it, then shredded bark, then the smallest twigs. The firekeeper bends close and blows slowly. Smoke rises first, then a flame. Around you, people begin to wake. The sight brings relief that no one needs to explain. In the upper Paleolithic world, controlled fire is one of the foundations of survival. It provides warmth, light, cooked food, protection from some animals, and a place for social gathering. Fire can harden wooden spear points, dry hides, smoke meat, heat stones, and make cold shelters bearable. It also demands constant care. There are no matches in a pouch, no metal lighter waits beside the hearth. Making fire from nothing is possible, but it requires dry material, skill, patience, and suitable weather. Depending on place and period, people may strike certain stones together to create sparks, or use friction to produce heat. Yet keeping an existing flame alive is often easier than beginning again. That is why embers matter. You watch the firekeeper lift one glowing coal with a piece of bone and place it into a nest of dry plant fibre. The bundle is wrapped carefully, leaving enough air for the ember to breathe. Such a bundle could help carry fire from one camp to another. The group may soon need to move. If the herds have left the valley, the people will follow. A travelling ember could save valuable time at the next shelter. Early human communities did not merely use fire, they organised daily routines around it. Someone gathered fuel, someone protected tinder from moisture, someone watched the hearth through the night, someone made sure children did not scatter burning material across dry bedding. The work never truly ended. You step outside with two adults to collect wood. Snow reaches your ankles. Many branches are damp, but dead limbs beneath thick trees remain partly sheltered. You gather the thinnest twigs first because they will catch more easily. Larger pieces are tested by bending. Dry wood snaps. Wet wood bends and complains. A few branches are scraped with stone to expose the drier centre. The smell of pine rises from the pale wood. Today, you might consider a fireplace pleasant decoration. Here, the hearth is closer to a shared heartbeat. If it fails during deep cold, the group loses warmth, light, and a dependable way to prepare food. You return carrying fuel against your shoulder. Inside, the fire has grown stronger. A flat stone warms near the edge. Strips of meat hang above the smoke, drying slowly. A child brings bark to the firekeeper and receives a quiet nod. The hearth shapes the whole shelter. People sleep near enough to feel warmth. but not so close that sparks reach the hides. Tools are placed where the light is best. Scraping, sewing, and cutting happen beside the flames. Smoke drifts toward the entrance. Though some remains beneath the ceiling and stings your eyes, repeated hearths have been found at many Paleolithic sites, sometimes built in the same places over generations. Layers of ash, charcoal, burned bone, and reddened earth reveal where fires once burned. These traces help archaeologists reconstruct living spaces and patterns of occupation. Even so, specialists continue to examine whether every burned layer represents a domestic hearth. Natural fires, later disturbance, and chemical changes in soil can complicate the picture. Near the wall, an older toolmaker holds a wooden spear shaft over the heat. The point is rotated slowly, never left in one place long enough to burn. Gentle heating can dry and harden the wood. The toolmaker then scrapes the darkened surface with stone, smoothing the point. A small but memorable detail is that heat could alter stone as well. Some prehistoric craftspeople warmed certain rocks before shaping them, making the material easier to fracture in predictable ways. Too much heat, however, could crack or ruin the stone. The idea feels surprisingly modern. It is careful material engineering beside a smoky hearth with no written manual. You sit near a woman preparing a hide. She holds part of it above the smoke, turning it occasionally. Smoking can help preserve skin, reduce stiffness, and discourage insects. The hide absorbs the smell of the fire, a scent that will travel with the group for days. Everything near the hearth carries that smell. Hair, clothing, tools, food, and even the cave walls. The smoke is uncomfortable, but familiar. It signals warmth, people, and safety. Outside, a raven calls from the ridge. The visiting hunter returns from a short walk and reports that reindeer tracks lead south. The group will likely leave after another night. This means the fire must be prepared for travel. The firekeeper chooses a dense piece of partly burned wood. Its center still glows. It is placed in a bark container lined with ash, fungus, or dry plant matter. The aim is not to keep a bright flame, but to preserve slow heat. Evidence from later traditional societies shows several ways of carrying embers, including bark containers, shells, hollow wood, and slow-burning fungus. Direct proof from the Paleolithic is rare because these materials decay. But the practice is practical and widely considered plausible. The group tests the ember bundle. A faint thread of smoke escapes. Too much air would make it burn quickly. Too little would extinguish it. The balance is delicate. You might wonder how many journeys were organised around something so small. A glowing coal weighs almost nothing. Yet everyone must protect it from snow, rain, and careless movement. Children are warned not to touch the bundle. Adults take turns carrying it. The person holding it walks near the centre of the group, away from sudden gusts and falling water. Fire also changes food. Roots soften beside hot stones. Meat cooks slowly over the coals. Bones are warmed before being cracked for marrow. Cooking can make some foods easier to chew and digest, reduce certain risks, and release more energy from what is eaten. The timing of habitual cooking in human evolution remains disputed. Some researchers propose very early origins, while others ask for clear archaeological proof by the Upper Paleolithic. However, regular fire use and cooked food are firmly part of human life. You receive a piece of roasted root. Its outer skin is dark, but the inside is soft and sweet. Steam warms your face. The food would have been much harder to eat raw, around the hearth. Conversation grows. A hunter describes the southern tracks. An elder remembers a shelter beyond the pass. A child imitates wet wood hissing in the flames, and the group laughs quietly. The fire is practical, but it is also social. It extends the day beyond sunset. It gives people a place to share stories, repair tools, comfort children, and discuss tomorrow. Without it, darkness would arrive more completely. With it, the cave becomes a shared room. As evening approaches, the firekeeper prepares for the final night in this shelter. Thick pieces of wood are added slowly. Ashes are arranged to protect the coals. Extra tinder is placed in a dry pouch for morning. Nothing is hurried. The group has learned that fire rewards patience. Feed it too quickly, and smoke fills the cave. Leave it untended, and it weakens. Scatter it carelessly, and it threatens the shelter it is meant to protect. You lie down beside the familiar warmth. The flames become smaller. Shadows move softly across the stone. Outside, the valley waits beneath snow, and the southern route remains hidden beyond the ridge. Tomorrow, the group may leave this cave, but the fire will travel too, carried as one quiet ember from an old shelter toward a new one. Morning enters the cave as a pale band of light. The group is preparing to leave. Animal skins are folded, stone tools are wrapped in hide, dried food is divided into small carrying bundles. The ember from the hearth rests inside a bark container, breathing out a thin thread of smoke. You help lift a bundle of sharpened wooden shafts. The cave that sheltered everyone through storms and hunger now feels strangely empty. Ash remains in the hearth. Scrape marks cover the floor. A few broken flakes of stone lie near the wall. Soon, silence will return, and the shelter may wait months or years before another group arrives. The journey south begins slowly. Children walk near the center. Older people move where the ground is firmest. Hunters travel ahead and behind, watching for animals and checking the route. The visiting hunter leads everyone toward the pass described beside the fire. You follow a narrow trail through snow. The air is cold but still. Sunlight reflects from the valley so brightly that you must lower your eyes. Each breath feels dry in your throat beneath your clothing. The weight of the bundle warms your back. Travel brings new risks. A group on the move cannot depend on familiar water, known shelter, or a well-prepared hearth. Everyone must avoid injury because even a small accident can slow the entire community. A twisted ankle may prevent someone from hunting. A deep cut can become infected. A fever can leave a person too weak to walk. These quiet dangers often threaten survival more than dramatic encounters with predators. You notice this when one hunter stops beside a patch of blood on the snow. It does not belong to an animal. A thin stone flake has cut the hunter's palm while adjusting a tool. The wound is not large, but everyone treats it seriously. An older woman washes the hand with clean melted snow. She presses a folded piece of soft plant material against the cut and binds it with a narrow strip of hide. The hunter flexes the fingers, testing whether the hand can still hold a spear. There are no medicines in the modern sense. Yet prehistoric people were not ignorant of care. They knew how to clean wounds, apply pressure, support injured limbs, keep sick people warm, and use certain plants. Some plant substances may have reduced pain, inflammation, or infection, although identifying deliberate medical treatment from ancient remains is difficult. Human skeletons from prehistoric sites sometimes show healed fractures and serious injuries that could only have been survived with support from others. A person unable to walk or gather food may have lived for years after an injury. That evidence reveals something important. Care was part of survival. You continue through the pass. The injured hunter carries less weight now. Someone else has taken part of the bundle without complaint. In a small community, weakness cannot always be hidden, and assistance is not simply kindness. Keeping an experienced person alive preserves knowledge, skill, and relationships. The path descends toward a wooded valley. Snow becomes thinner beneath the trees, wet leaves cover dark soil. The air smells of bark, fungus, and cold earth. Water drips from branches and collects in shallow pools. The group pauses near a stream. Everyone is thirsty, but no one drinks immediately. Water can look so clear and still cause illness. Animal waste. Decaying remains, and stagnant pools may carry invisible dangers. Early humans could not see microbes, but repeated experience taught them that some water sources were safer than others. Flowing water is chosen instead of a motionless pool. A container made from hide is filled near the center of the stream. Some water is warmed with heated stones before being given to a child who's been coughing. Whether prehistoric people regularly boiled drinking water is uncertain. Containers made from skin, bark, wood, or woven fibre rarely survive, and the archaeological record cannot reveal every ordinary action still. Heated stone technology made boiling possible long before ceramic pots became common. The child drinks slowly. The cough is dry. An elder touches the child's forehead and listens to the breathing. Illness creates a fear different from hunger or cold because its source cannot be tracked across snow. There may be no visible animal, no storm cloud, and no clear path away from danger. A person simply weakens. You walk beside the child's mother as the group continues. The mother carries both the child and a bundle. Though others regularly take one of them, the pace becomes slower. No one suggests leaving the child behind. The valley offers a possible shelter before evening. A shallow rock overhang rises beside the stream. It is smaller than the cave, but dry leaves and old animal dung show that the spaces remain protected from recent snow. The group inspects it carefully. A hunter checks for fresh predator tracks. Another looks for loose stone overhead. Old bones near the rear are examined for tooth marks. The shelter may have been used by wolves, hyenas, bears, or earlier human visitors. No fresh signs appear. The group settles in. The ember container is opened. The coal inside has weakened, but a faint red glow remains. Dry fungus and shredded bark are placed around it. Someone blows gently until smoke thickens and a small flame appears. Relief moves through the shelter. Wet footwear is placed near the fire. The sick child lies beneath fur coverings. Food preparation begins, but supplies must be handled carefully. Meat that smells wrong is discarded. Roots are inspected for mold. Fat is warmed slowly. Food poisoning would be especially dangerous during travel. Vomiting or severe stomach illness could quickly cause weakness and dehydration. Prehistoric people lacked knowledge of bacteria, but they could recognize spoiled smells, strange colors, and the connection between certain foods and sickness. One curious detail comes from dental calculus, the hardened plaque preserved on ancient teeth. Researchers have recovered microscopic traces of plant material, starches, smoke particles, and other substances from it. These remains provide clues about foods, environments, and perhaps medicinal plants that rarely survive elsewhere. In some Neanderthal remains, plant compounds have led researchers to suggest possible self-medication. Others remain cautious. A bitter plant found between ancient teeth may have been chosen for healing, eaten as food, or consumed accidentally. The evidence is intriguing, but intention is difficult to prove after tens of thousands of years. You sit close to the sick child. The fire casts a warm glow across the face. Breathing remains steady. An elder prepares a mild drink by warming water with a heated stone and adding a small piece of aromatic plant. The shelter fills with the scent of smoke and crushed leaves. Outside, the forest grows dim. A wolf passes somewhere beyond the trees, but you only hear it once. The group barely reacts. Tonight, the greater concern rests beneath the fur beside the hearth. Fear does not always come with claws. Sometimes it arrives as heat beneath the skin. Sometimes it is a cut that refuses to close. Sometimes it is pain inside the body that no one can see. The adults speak quietly about whether to continue in the morning. The reindeer tracks lead farther south, but the child may need rest. Food remains limited. Staying could be safer for the illness and worse for hunger. There is no perfect choice. One person suggests that a few hunters travel ahead while the rest remain. Another points out that dividing the group reduces protection. The discussion continues in low voices. Archaeological evidence cannot easily show how prehistoric communities made such decisions, yet healed injuries, long-term disabilities, and survival through serious illness suggests that people often adjusted movement and shared resources to care for vulnerable members. You feel the child's small hand resting against the fur. The skin's warm but not growing warmer. The mother begins to relax. Near the entrance, the hunter with the cut hand replaces the bandage. The wound has stopped bleeding. The fingers still move. 2 dangers have not disappeared, but they have been managed. That is how much of prehistoric survival works. There is rarely complete safety. There is only careful attention, shared labour, and the willingness to protect one another when strength fails. The fire settles. Rain begins softly outside, tapping against leaves and stone. The stream continues moving through the darkness, carrying cold water beyond the shelter. You lie down near the others. The group has survived predators, storms, and empty hunts. Yet tonight reminds you that the smallest threats may be the hardest to understand. A hidden illness, a careless cut, a mouthful of spoiled food, an exhausted body that can walk no farther. Fear remains close, but so does care. And beside the quiet fire, care is what keeps the darkness from becoming too large. Rain continues through the night. By morning, the forest around the rock shelter is shining with water. Drops cling to bare branches. Dark soil has replaced much of the snow beneath the trees. And the stream runs higher than before, carrying leaves, twigs, and thin sheets of broken ice. The sick child is breathing more easily. The hunter's cut remains closed. After a quiet discussion, the group decides to move again. The reindeer tracks lead south, and the valley behind you offers little food. Remaining in one place may feel safe, but safety can fade when fuel and provisions begin to disappear. In a hunter-gatherer world, movement is not aimless wandering. It is a carefully judged response to seasons, animals, water, shelter, and memory. You help fold the damp hides. They are heavier now and smell strongly of smoke. Wet fur and earth. Stone tools are wrapped in leather. Bone needles are placed in small pouches. Food is divided so no single person carries everything. The ember from last night's hearth is transferred into dry fungus and ash. Then the group steps away from the shelter. The route follows the stream at first. Rivers are natural guides through unfamiliar land. They lead toward valleys, lakes, coastlines, and places where animals come to drink. They also provide fish, reeds, edible plants, stone, and clay. Yet rivers can become obstacles when swollen by rain or melting snow. You walk above the bank, where the ground is firmer. The children remain close to the centre of the group. The recovering child is carried for their part of the journey, wrapped against an adult's chest. Older people use wooden staffs for balance. Hunters move ahead, checking crossings and watching for fresh tracks. Travel in the Upper Paleolithic depends mostly on human strength. People carry tools, food, infants, hides, fuel, and personal objects over long distances. In snowy regions, simple sled-like frames or hides may have been dragged across the ground. Along rivers and coasts, some communities may have used rafts or early boats, though such wooden technologies rarely survive. What remains in the archaeological record is often stone. What vanished was everything made from bark, fibre, leather, and wood. The absence of those materials can make prehistoric people appear less inventive than they were. You reach a bend where the stream narrows between rocks. The water is fast but shallow enough to cross. One hunter enters first, using a spear shaft for support. The current pushes against the legs. Another person passes bundles across before the children are carried over. Cold water reaches your knees. It enters the fur around your feet and numbs your toes almost immediately. The stones beneath the surface are smooth and unstable. You move slowly, feeling for each step on the far bank. Everyone stops to wring water from clothing and replace wet foot coverings. This takes time, but wet feet in cold weather are dangerous. Frostbite, skin damage, and loss of sensation can turn a short crossing into a serious problem. Today, a bridge may reduce a river to a few seconds of mild inconvenience. Here, a narrow stream requires planning, teamwork, and a sincere respect for slippery stones. The landscape opens as you continue south. Forest gives way to broad grassland. Snow remains in shallow hollows, but long strips of brown grass bend beneath the wind. Eastern hills rise softly beneath a grey sky beneath. The air smells cleaner here, less of wet leaves and more of open earth. Fresh reindeer droppings appear near a cluster of stones. The group pauses. The animals passed recently. Their tracks lead toward a low ridge where the wind has exposed patches of grass. The hunters study the direction but do not immediately follow. The group needs shelter before evening, and chasing the herd too far could leave everyone exposed. Migration always involves choices. Animals move for food, water, breeding, and seasonal conditions. Humans follow them, but not blindly. People also need firewood, safe sleeping places, edible plants, stone for tools, and routes suitable for children and elders. A valley rich in reindeer but empty of fuel may be useful only briefly. A cave with good shelter but no water cannot support a group for long. Survival depends on balancing several needs at once. You cross the grassland toward a line of limestone cliffs. An elder remembers a rock shelter there from many seasons ago. The route is not marked, yet the elder recognizes the shape of two hills and a narrow split in the cliff. Memory turns the landscape into a map. The shelter appears near sunset. It is shallow but broad, with a dry floor and a view across the plain. Old ash lies beneath a thin layer of dust. Stone flakes remain near the rear wall. Someone used this place before. Perhaps it was the same group years earlier. Perhaps strangers rested here last season. The people inspect the site. No fresh predator tracks appear. The roof looks stable. A spring runs from the rock nearby, forming a small clear pool before disappearing into the grass. The camp begins to take shape. Hides are hung as wind breaks. Dry grass is gathered for bedding. The ember bundle is opened, and after several patient breaths, flame catches in shredded bark. Smoke rises toward the cliff and drifts into the evening air. Excavated camps show that prehistoric groups often return to favorable places repeatedly. Reliable water, shelter, nearby game, workable stone, and good visibility made certain locations valuable across generations. Layers of hearths and discarded tools can record these returns, yet it is not always easy to know whether repeated occupation came from one community, several unrelated groups, or people separated by hundreds of years. Researchers continue to piece together these patterns through stone sources, tool styles, animal remains, and sediment layers. Near the spring, a child finds a shell bead. It is worn and cracked, with a small hole through the centre. The nearest coast may be far away. The bead could have been dropped by a traveller, traded through many hands, or carried here by someone who once followed a river all the way to the sea. This tiny object hints at a world larger than the valley. Long-distance movement connected prehistoric communities across surprising distances. Stone from one region appears in camps far beyond its source. Shells travel inland, pigments move between river systems, knowledge follows the same paths. The group does not live inside a small circle. It belongs to a shifting network of routes, meeting places, seasonal camps, and remembered shelters. As darkness approaches, hunters return from the ridge. They have seen the reindeer. The herd is large and moving slowly along the plain. Tomorrow, a small hunting party may follow. The rest of the group will gather fuel, repair equipment, and search for routes near the spring. You sit beside the new fire. The shelter is unfamiliar, but familiar actions quickly make it livable. A woman spreads dry grass beneath sleeping hides. An elder arranges tools near the wall. Children place stones around the hearth. The sick child drinks warm water and watches the flames. Outside, the reindeer move somewhere beyond the darkness. Their hooves press new paths into wet earth. Wolves may follow them. Ravens may circle above them at dawn. Human hunters will study their route and decide whether to continue south again. You think back to the cave left behind. Its stone walls felt permanent, but the people were never meant to remain there forever. The world of early humans is built from temporary places joined by memory. A cave in winter, a river crossing in spring, a shaded valley in summer, a grassland camp during migration. Home is not one fixed shelter. Home is the group, the fire, the tools, the stories, and the knowledge of where to go next. Night settles across the plain. Stars appear between broken clouds. The firelight touches the limestone wall, revealing old soot from visitors long gone. Their names are forgotten, but their hearth remained. You lie beneath a hide and listen to the spring moving over stone. The journey has carried everyone into a new valley, yet the ancient rhythm continues. Follow the water, watch the animals, remember the shelter, carry the fire. The spring continues whispering beside the limestone shelter. By morning, the reindeer herd has moved farther across the plain, leaving long lines of tracks in the damp ground. Several hunters follow at a distance, but you remain near the shelter with the elders, children, and toolmakers. The day is warmer than those before it. Sunlight reaches the cliff face and dries the wet hides hanging near the entrance. Smoke rises in a thin column from the hearth. The air smells of grass, mineral-rich water, and stone warmed by the sun. One child picks up the cracked shell bead found near the spring. The elder accepts it carefully, turning it between two fingers. The surface is pale beneath the dirt. Its hole has been shaped deliberately, perhaps with a fine stone point. Someone once threaded it onto sinew or plant fibre and wore it against skin or clothing. Objects like this travel through time differently from spoken stories. A story survives only while people remember and repeat it. A bead can fall into dust and weight. The elder leads you toward the rear of the shelter. At first, the wall appears plain. Soot darkens the stone above old hearths. Water stains run through cracks. Then your eyes adjust, and faint markings emerge. A red line curves across the limestone. Nearby, several black strokes form the suggestion of an animal's back. The image is incomplete, or perhaps only part of it has survived. A rounded body, a narrow head, and two lines that might be legs appear beneath the uneven surface. You step closer. The pigment is not bright, it is softened through age, smoke, moisture, and mineral deposits. Yet someone placed it here intentionally. Prehistoric artists used materials found in the landscape. Red and yellow ochre came from iron-rich minerals. Black could be made from charcoal or manganese compounds. Pigments were ground into powder and mixed with water, fat, plant liquid, marrow, or other binding substances. The tools for applying colour may have included fingers, pads of fur, chewed sticks, hollow bones, and brushes made from hair or plant fibres. Some images were drawn directly, others were blown onto the wall. You notice a hand shape near the animal. The centre is bare stone, while red pigment surrounds the fingers. Someone may have placed a hand against the wall and sprayed pigment around it, leaving a negative outline. The hand is smaller than yours. Perhaps it belonged to a young person. Perhaps it belonged to an adult with narrow hands. Assigning age and identity from a print alone is difficult, but the impression feels immediate. A person stood here, pressed skin against cool limestone, and left the shape behind. You place your own hand near it without touching. The fingers almost align. A strongly supported feature of Upper Paleolithic culture is the creation of cave and portable art. Famous painted caves preserve images of horses, bison, mammoths, deer, lions, rhinoceroses, abstract signs, and human hands. Carved figures and engraved bones show that artistic expression also travelled beyond cave walls. The artists were not decorating an empty museum. These places were part of living landscapes. Some chambers lay near occupied shelters. Others required long journeys into darkness. through narrow passages and uneven ground. Lamps made from stone and animal fat could provide light. Torches offered brighter flames but created smoke and required more fuel. You imagine entering a deep cave with only a small flame. Every step would need care. Water would drip nearby. The light would move across the walls, making painted animals appear to shift as shadows passed over cracks and curves. The effect may have been powerful, yet there is no single accepted explanation for why such images were made. Some researchers connect them with ritual activity, spiritual beliefs, hunting traditions, storytelling, teaching, identity, or relationships with animals. Others argue that different images serve different purposes across thousands of years. There is still no full agreement on whether cave art belonged mainly to specialists, whole communities, children, families, or changing combinations of people. The people beside you cannot answer these later questions. They simply begin preparing pigment. An older woman places a small lump of ochre on a flat stone. She strikes it with another rock, breaking it into fragments. Then she grinds the pieces slowly. The sound is soft and repetitive. Stone moves across stone. Red dust gathers beneath her hand. A child adds a few drops of water from a shell. The mixture darkens. A little animal fat is worked into it until the pigment becomes smoother. You smell earth and smoke. Ochre has practical uses as well as visual ones. It can colour hides, skin, tools, ornaments, and cave walls. In some contexts, mineral powders may have helped with hide processing, adhesives, insect control, or protection from sunlight. Although their effectiveness and purpose varied, one especially curious feature of prehistoric pigment use is its great age. Ochre appears at sites far older than the best-known European cave paintings. This suggests that humans and earlier human relatives valued coloured minerals long before grand animal images covered deep cave chambers. The attraction may have begun with something simple. A red stone leaves a mark, the mark remains. A person discovers that memory can be placed on a surface. The elder gives the child a narrow piece of bone. Its point enters the pigment. The child draws a short line on a loose flat stone rather than the cave wall. The first mark is thick and uneven. The next is smoother, nearby. Another child presses fingertips into the red mixture and places a row of dots along the edge of the stone. No one corrects the pattern. Perhaps it is practice. Perhaps it is play. Perhaps the difference between those things is not important. A small object from another site offers a similarly intimate glimpse of ancient mines. Some engraved bones and stones carry repeated lines, grids, zigzags, or notches. They may have recorded events, counted days, marked ownership, guided decoration, or simply pleased the maker. Interpretations remain uncertain because a pattern can carry several meanings at once. You look again at the faded animal on the wall. Its outline follows a natural bulge in the limestone. The artist used the shape of the rock to suggest muscle and movement. A crack becomes part of the back. A small hollow helps form the eye. This reveals close observation. The person who made the image knew the animal's body. Perhaps the artist had watched wild horses crossing the plain. Perhaps the image was created before a hunt or after one. Perhaps it helped children learn the shape of a creature whose tracks they already knew. The elder points to another mark, a set of parallel lines beside the animal. Their meaning is unclear. They could represent spears, counting marks, grass, direction, or nothing recognizable to you. Modern viewers often want a single translation. Prehistoric art rarely offers one. It preserves intention without explanation. A faint tapping sound comes from deeper inside the rock shelter. You follow it to a narrow side chamber where a toolmaker engraves a small piece of bone. The person turns it under the light and scratches repeated curves into the surface with a sharp stone flake. The design slowly resembles a reindeer head. The antler is simplified, but graceful. Portable art can be carried between camps, exchanged, worn, or held during stories, unlike a wall painting. It travels with the group. It may gather meaning as different hands touch it. The cracked shell bead is placed beside the carved bone. One came from the sea, one came from an animal. Both have been reshaped by human attention. As evening approaches, the hunters return with news but no meat. The herd remains ahead, and another attempt will come later, for now. The group gathers near the fire. The elder holds up the newly carved reindeer. Children lean closer. A story begins. You do not understand every word, but the gestures describe antlers, snow, migration, and a river crossing. The carved figure moves through the firelight as the elder speaks. Behind the storyteller, the faded animal on the cave wall seems to listen. The marks around you are not frightening. They make the unknown feel more familiar. A person can draw the animal that disappears into darkness. A person can place a hand against stone and leave proof of presence. A person can turn fear, memory, and wonder into colour. Night settles beyond the shelter. The plain becomes dark, but the cave wall holds its quiet shapes. You rest beneath them, surrounded by animals that no longer move and hands that never entirely vanished. The faded hands remain above you as a morning light reaches the shelter. Outside, mist rests across the plain. The reindeer herd has moved beyond the southern hills, and the hunters prepare to follow. Hides are folded, tools are packed, and the small carved figures return to its pouch. You leave the limestone wall behind. For several hours, the group travels through open grassland broken by patches of pine and low scrub. The air is warmer than before, though snow still lies in shaded hollows. Meltwater runs through shallow channels, making the ground soft beneath your feet. The landscape belongs to more than one kind of human. Across parts of Ice Age Europe and Western Asia, Neanderthals lived for hundreds of thousands of years before disappearing roughly 40,000 years ago. They survived repeated cold periods, shifting forests, dry steppe, and harsh winters. Their bodies were strongly built, with broad chests, powerful limbs, and features suited to demanding environments. They were not clumsy creatures waiting to be replaced. They made stone tools. They controlled fire. They hunted large animals. They cared for injured companions. They used caves and open-air camps. They may have decorated themselves, collected pigments, and engaged in symbolic practices. Modern humans entering these regions encountered landscapes already known by other people. You follow a trail between two ridges. The visiting hunter stops near a cluster of stones. Several flakes lie on the ground, partly covered by soil. Their edges remain sharp. An older toolmaker kneels and lifts one. The stone was shaped differently from the blades used by your group. The maker prepared the core carefully, then removed a broad flake with a controlled strike. Archaeologists associate several such methods with Neanderthal tool traditions, especially techniques often grouped under the term Mysterian. The flake fits comfortably in the hand. It could cut meat, scrape hide, or shape wood. Someone once sat here and worked. The camp is empty now, but the ground carries evidence of another human presence. You notice an old hearth nearby. Charcoal darkens the soil. Burned bone fragments lie among the stones. A few animal teeth remain where meat may have been processed. The group studies the site without fear. These remains could belong to strangers from a neighbouring modern human band. They could also belong to Neanderthals, depending on the time and region through which you are travelling, for the journey you now experience. Both kinds of humans share the wider world. They may not look identical, but they recognise one another as thinking beings. Perhaps they hear unfamiliar speech across a valley. Perhaps they see smoke from a distant fire. Perhaps they find abandoned tools and understand immediately that skilled hands made them. The group continues cautiously. Human contact carries uncertainty. As you learned when meeting the neighbouring camp, contact between different human populations may have felt even more unfamiliar. Clothing styles, gestures, hunting methods, and sounds could vary. Yet complete separation did not always occur. Genetic evidence shows that many people living today carry small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry. This means that modern humans and Neanderthals met and had children together. The encounters were not limited to distant observation or competition. At least some involved close social relationships. You walk beneath a line of cliffs. Smoke appears ahead. It rises from a sheltered hollow where several figures move beside a fire. Your group stops. The people below are broad-bodied and dressed in animal skins. One adult carries a wooden spear, another sits near the hearth, scraping a hide with a stone tool. A child stands close to the rock wall. Watching the visitors above, no one advances. The distance between the groups feels wide, though it is only a short walk. One of your elders raises an open hand. A person below answers with a similar gesture. The movement may not carry exactly the same meaning, but it shows no immediate threat. You descend slowly. The air smells of smoke, cooked meat, and damp limestone. Spears remain visible, yet their points face the ground. The two groups meet beside a shallow stream. Speech sounds different. Some tones are lower and more abrupt. Your own group answers slowly, using gestures for water, food, direction, and animals. Communication does not require perfect grammar. A pointing finger can show where a herd moved. A hand placed against the stomach can express hunger. A piece of stone offered openly can begin an exchange. One Neanderthal toolmaker holds out a prepared flake. Your craftsperson examines its broad cutting edge, then offers a narrow blade in return. Both study the unfamiliar technique. This scene is necessarily imagined, but the possibility rests on real evidence that different human groups overlapped in time and space. They may have watched one another, exchanged ideas, competed, voided contact, or formed relationships. The exact balance remains uncertain. Some archaeologists emphasize cultural differences and possible competition for food and shelter. Others point toward genetic mixing and similarities in behavior as signs that interaction could be complex and sometimes cooperative. There is no reason to assume that every meeting followed the same pattern. You sit near the edge of the Neanderthal camp. Their shelter is practical. Wooden poles support hides against the rock. Firewood is stacked beneath an overhang. Bone and stone tools lie in working areas around the hearth. A child turns a small object in one hand. It is a piece of eagle talon, polished and pierced. Finds from several Neanderthal sites include eagle claws that appear to have been modified, perhaps for use as pendants or ornaments. Other discoveries include pigments, shells, feathers, and carefully arranged objects. Such evidence has encouraged a major change in how Neanderthals are understood. They were once portrayed as lacking symbolic thought. That old image has steadily weakened. Researchers now ask not whether Neanderthals were intelligent, but how their cultural lives differed from those of contemporary modern humans. One intriguing discovery comes from mineral formations in Brunequel Cave in France, where broken stalagmites were arranged in circular structures deep underground more than 100,000 years ago. Neanderthals were likely responsible. Reaching that chamber required light, planning, and movement far beyond the cave entrance. Why they built the structures is unknown. The purpose may have been social, practical, symbolic, or something no longer recoverable. You look toward the child with the eagle talon. The object may mean beauty, it may mean belonging, it may connect the wearer to a bird, a place, or a family memory. As with the marks on the cave wall, intention survives without translation. Food is shared in small amounts. Roasted meat passes between the groups. The flavor is smoky and rich. A Neanderthal elder points west and imitates a large animal with curving tusks. Mammoths have been seen near a river. Your elder draws the southern ridge in wet soil and shows where the reindeer crossed. Information moves in both directions. A gentle modern habit would be to imagine one group teaching everything and the other simply receiving it. The ancient world was probably less convenient for tidy storytelling. Each population held knowledge shaped by generations of experience. Neanderthals knew the cold valleys, migration routes, stone sources, and sheltered caves of their regions. Modern humans carried traditions developed elsewhere. When people met, influence may have travelled both ways. The children begin to relax first. One from your group places a row of stones beside the stream. A Neanderthal child adds another. Soon they are arranging shapes together. Without needing shared words, adults watch them. The tension does not disappear, but it softens. Experts continue to discuss why Neanderthals eventually vanished as a distinct population. Climate instability, small population size, competition, disease, interbreeding, and differences in social networks may all have contributed. There may be no single cause. Some Neanderthals were not simply removed from history. Their descendants became part of later human populations. You carry traces of them still. As afternoon light fades, your group prepares to leave. The two camps will not travel together. Their routes and needs are different. Yet the meeting ends without conflict. A stone flake changes hands. A little food is exchanged. Directions are remembered. You climb towards the ridge and look back. Smoke rises from the Neanderthal shelter. Figures move beside the fire, repairing tools, tending children, and preparing for night. They do not seem like distant creatures, they seem familiar. Another group watches the weather. Another elder remembers winters. Another child learns beside the hearth. The world of early humans was never occupied by one simple line of progress. It was a branching human landscape filled with the populations who adapted, met, separated, and sometimes became family. You continue south beneath a quiet sky. Behind you, the Neanderthal fire grows smaller in the distance, but it does not vanish entirely. The Neanderthal fire remains in your thoughts as the group crosses the southern ridge. By evening, smoke from the other camp is no longer visible. The land opens into a wide valley where snow lies only in scattered patches. Brown grasses move beneath a steady wind, and small streams twist through dark soil toward a distant river. The reindeer herd has passed this way. Tracks cover the softer ground near the water. Fresh droppings lie among flattened grass. Ravens circle beyond a low hill, and several hunters study their movement, yet no one follows immediately. The group is tired. The recovering child needs rest. The injured hunter's hand is healing, but the fingers remain stiff. Hides are damp from travel, and the carried ember has weakened inside its container. A sheltered rise near the river becomes the new camp. Wooden poles are placed against one another and covered with animal skins. Stones hold the lower edges in place. Dry grass forms bedding. A shallow hearth is prepared in the centre, where smoke can drift through an opening above. You help feed the ember. At first, it produces only smoke. Then a small orange flame catches in shredded bark. Thin branches are added one at a time. Warmth slowly returns. Around this fire, you begin to see how fear changes. During the earliest moments of danger, fear tells the body to become alert. Hearing sharpens, muscles tighten, attention narrows toward a movement, sound, and possible escape. But humans do something more. They remember what happened. They discuss it. They change their behavior before the danger returns. This ability turns fear into preparation. The storm that once surprised the group becomes a reason to watch northern clouds. The dangerous river crossing becomes a warning repeated to children. A failed hunt becomes knowledge about wind direction and herd behavior. A stranger encountered peacefully becomes a possible future ally. Experience does not remove uncertainty. It gives uncertainty a shape. You sit beside an elder who is sorting stones. Some are good for cutting. Others are smooth enough to use as hammerstones. One dark piece has been carried from the neighbouring camp. The elder turns it in the light, comparing it with local material. A young toolmaker watches. The elder demonstrates how the stone breaks, striking near an edge and producing a narrow flake. The young person repeats the motion. This exchange shows one of the strongest patterns in human prehistory. Skills improved through teaching, imitation, and accumulation. A useful discovery did not need to vanish when its first maker died. It could be copied, corrected, and passed onward. Over many generations, tool traditions became more refined. People learned to prepare stone cores carefully, create long blades, shape bone points, sew fitted clothing, build shelters, and organize cooperative hunts. Each method rested on earlier observation. You might think of it as prehistoric research and development, only with more smoke, fewer meetings, and no one asking for a progress report before lunch. The young toolmaker produces a sharp flake. The elder inspects it, then uses a gesture showing approval. Nearby, hunters prepare for the next morning. One checks spear shafts for cracks. Another straightens a wooden point over gentle heat. Bone tips are examined for wear. Cordage is tightened around bindings. A hunting plan develops beside the hearth. The reindeer appear to be moving toward a narrow bend in the river. The group knows the land poorly, so scouts will first examine the route. No one wants to drive animals toward ground that could trap hunters as easily as prey. Fear encourages caution. Caution encourages planning. Planning allows cooperation. This sequence may be one of humanity's oldest strengths. Across the camp, children gather around the recovering hunter. He traces animal tracks in damp soil using a stick. A long narrow print represents wolf. A split hoof represents reindeer. A broad round shape represents mammoth. The children identify each one. Then the hunter changes the pattern. He places wolf tracks near reindeer tracks and asks what might happen next. One child points toward the herd, another points away, suggesting that the animals may turn. The lesson is not simply about recognizing marks, it is about predicting relationships. Early humans survived by understanding that one sign often led to another. Ravens could suggest a carcass. Fresh droppings could reveal how recently animals passed. Sudden silence among birds could warn of a predator. Dark clouds over distant hills could announce weather before rain or snow arrived. The world became readable. Not completely readable, of course. Nature retained an impressive ability to ignore human expectations. Still, patterns reduce surprise. A revealing detail from prehistoric sites is that damaged tools were often repaired rather than discarded immediately. Broken spear points could be reshaped. Dull stone edges could be sharpened again. Bone tools might be polished and reused until little material remained. This habit reflects more than scarcity. It shows planning and understanding of value. A tool carried for weeks contains labour, skill, and reliable material. Repairing it may be safer than trusting a new one at an important moment. The injured hunter unwraps the binding from his palm. The cut is closing. An elder smells the wound and checks for swelling. Satisfied. She applies a fresh strip of clean hide. Past danger has created another routine. Cuts are washed. Tools are wrapped. Sharp flakes are stored away from sleeping areas. Children learn where not to place their hands. Many forms of safety begin as memories of pain. As twilight deepens, a low call rises from the river. Wild horses stand beyond the reeds. Their bodies appear dark against the water. One animal drinks while the others remain alert, turning their heads towards different parts of the valley. The people watch quietly. The herd itself offers a lesson. Safety comes from shared attention. Not every horse looks in the same direction. One watches the ridge, another watches the riverbank. The group benefits from many eyes. Human camps operate in much the same way. One person tends fire, one watches children, one studies weather, one remembers routes, one notices when food smells wrong, one hears something moving beyond the shelter. No single person carries every fear. Researchers continue to explore how emotional responses shaped human evolution. Fear is ancient and shared with many animals. But human language and culture allow warnings to travel beyond the individual who first experienced danger. Some specialists argue that storytelling became especially valuable because it allowed people to learn from events they had never witnessed. Others point out that direct imitation, ritual, gesture, and practical teaching may have carried equal importance. The exact mixture cannot be reconstructed, yet the result surrounds you. Children fear thin ice without having fallen through it. Hunters respect bison without needing to be charged first. Families avoid unstable shelters because elders remember old rock falls. Fear travels through language, but so does the solution. The night becomes colder. Everyone moves closer to the fire. Food is shared. Mostly roots, dried meat, and a small amount of fat. The meal is quiet and filling enough. An elder begins recounting the storm near the old cave. The children already know the story, but they listen again. Each repetition strengthens the important parts. Watch the northern sky. Keep dry tinder ready. Do not cross the river near reeds. Stay close when snow hides the path. The story is becoming tradition. Tradition is memory shaped for a group. It may appear as a repeated route. A particular way of building a hearth. A rule about sharing meat. A gesture used when strangers approach. Or a tale told whenever winter clouds gather. Such customs reduce the number of decisions people must make during danger. Instead of inventing a response each time, the group begins with knowledge tested before. This does not mean tradition is always correct. Conditions change, old routes fail, animals shift direction. A method useful in one valley may be dangerous in another. Wisdom includes knowing when to follow memory and when to adjust it. The scouts return after dark. They have found a safe approach to the river bend. Reindeer tracks pass through soft ground near a narrow channel. Tomorrow, the hunters will attempt to guide part of the herd toward the crossing. The plan is repeated until everyone understands. Children are told where to remain. Tools are placed within reach. The firekeeper prepares extra tinder. You lie down beside the warm hearth, beyond the shelter. Wolves call near the river. Horses move through the grass. Reindeer continue along an ancient path they have followed for generations. Fear still lives in the valley, but now it is accompanied by maps drawn in ash, repaired tools, shared warning, and stories remembered beside firelight. What once caused only alarm has become knowledge, and knowledge, carried from one careful mind to another, is beginning to feel like courage. The camp wakes before sunrise. A faint silver light touches the river, and mist gathers above the reeds. The fire has burned through most of the night, leaving a circle of glowing coals beneath thin ash. Around you, hunters rise quietly and check the tools prepared the evening before. The plan beside the river bend has not changed. Several people will move ahead to watch the reindeer. Others will remain near the crossing. Children, elders, and the recovering child will stay close to the shelter, where the fire and supplies can be protected. You notice something important in this careful arrangement. The group is not responding only to the present moment. It is thinking about what may happen next. This ability to prepare for events that have not yet arrived is one of the deepest changes in the human story. Many animals store food, build nests, follow seasonal routes, or react to signs of approaching weather. Early humans, however, combined foresight with language, shared memory, tools, and group planning. They could imagine tomorrow together. They could discuss several possible outcomes. They could carry materials for needs that did not yet exist. You follow the hunters toward the river. Each person carries more than a weapon. One has spare cord, another carries a stone point wrapped in hide. A third holds a bundle of dry grass and bark in case a small fire must be made away from camp. These objects are insurance against uncertainty. A broken binding can be replaced. A damaged point can be exchanged. A cold delay can be answered with flame. This kind of planning appears throughout the archaeological record. Stone for tools was sometimes carried far from its source. Food was dried, smoked, frozen, or stored. Hides were prepared before winter arrived. Shelters were repaired before storms. Groups moved towards seasonal resources before hunger became desperate. Survival gradually became less about reacting at the final moment and more about preparing while time remained. The river bend appears below. Reindeer tracks cross the mud and disappear into tall grass. The herd has not yet reached the narrow channel, but fresh marks show that it is close. 2 scouts climb a low ridge, the others wait beneath scattered trees. You crouch beside a hunter who is checking a spear point. The binding is made from sinew and plant fibre, strengthened with a dark adhesive. Resin, wax, ochre, and other ingredients could be combined into useful glues, depending on the materials available. The hunter warms the binding between both hands. Nothing is left to chance. A loose point today could mean hunger tomorrow. The group has learned to connect one moment with another. That connection changes fear. Hunger is no longer only the pain of an empty stomach. It becomes a reason to preserve food. Cold is no longer only the feeling of freezing air. It becomes a reason to gather fuel during mild weather. Injury is no longer only suffering after a fall. It becomes a reason to test a crossing before children approach. You hear a soft whistle from the ridge. The herd is coming. The hunters move into position. This time. No one is surprised by the wind, the terrain, or the route. Scouts have already checked the riverbank. Loose stones have been removed from one path. A narrow escape route has been left open for the hunters. The plan does not depend on bravery alone. It depends on preparation. The reindeer appear beyond the grass. They move in a loose group, stopping often to feed. Antlers rise above their backs. Their breath forms pale clouds in the cold morning air. 2 hunters circle behind them at a great distance. The people near you wait. Long minutes pass. The river continues moving over stone. Reeds bend gently. A raven lands on a branch and watches with the calm confidence of a creature that has no responsibility for the plan. Then the herd begins moving towards the channel. The hunters behind it remain careful, using movement and sound to guide rather than frighten. A sudden panic could scatter the animals in every direction. Several reindeer enter the muddy ground near the bend. The waiting hunters rise. Spears are thrown from a controlled distance. Most miss. One strikes a young animal near the edge of the herd. The remaining reindeer turn and escape across open ground. No one pursues them far. The injured animal slows near the reeds, and the hunters approach with caution. The hunt ends quickly. There is no celebration filled with shouting. The group stands quietly. An animal has died, and its body will support many lives. Meat will be carried back. Hide will become clothing or bedding. Bone can become tools. Sinew can bind points and sew garments. Fat will provide energy. Every useful part will be considered. Successful large-game hunting was an important part of life for many upper Paleolithic groups, especially in cold regions where animal products offered food, fuel, clothing, and raw material. Yet success depended on wide knowledge, not simple force. People watched seasons. They studied migration. They maintained tools. They coordinated roles. They remembered previous failures. You help prepare the animal. Stone blades open the hide with clean cuts. The tools are sharp enough to work efficiently, though they dull with use. Meat is divided into pieces that can be carried. Bones are separated for later processing. The work is slow and organized. One person watches the valley for predators. Another checks the weather. Others begin transporting the first loads toward camp. This is planning within planning. The group must use the animal before spoilage begins. Some meat may be cooked immediately. Some can be dried over smoke. Fat can be rendered. Hide must be cleaned before it stiffens. A curious insight comes from prehistoric kill and butchery sites, where different parts of animal bodies appear in separate locations. In some cases, Hunters removed the most useful portions first and left heavier bones behind. In others, entire carcasses were transported or processed near camp. These patterns suggest that people calculated weight, distance, food value, and available labor. There is no written arithmetic. Still, practical calculation guides every choice. How much can one person carry? How far is the shelter? How long will daylight last? Which parts provide the greatest value? The answers are held in experience. On the walk back, a hunter points toward the sky. Thin clouds are forming in the west. The group increases its pace slightly. Meat is heavy, and the path near the river may become difficult if rain begins. Today, future planning often means entering reminders into a small device and hoping not to ignore them later. Here, tomorrow is prepared through bundles, routes, smoke, memory, and shared responsibility. When you return to camp, the children see the meat and understand immediately. Work begins. A section is placed near the fire for the first meal. Thin strips are cut for drying. The hide is stretched with wooden stakes. Bones are set aside for marrow, tools, and fuel. The recovering child sits near the hearth and watches. An elder explains how much food should be eaten now and how much must be preserved. The successful hunt does not mean endless abundance. It creates a temporary opportunity. Without planning, a large amount of food can disappear quickly through spoilage. Overeating, scavengers, or poor storage with care, it can support the group during the next stage of travel. There is no settled answer about how extensively different Paleolithic communities stored food. Preservation methods depended on climate, season, mobility, and available containers. Cold air could freeze meat naturally. Smoke and drying could extend its use. Pits, stone caches, and hidden storage places may have been used in some regions. Many storage materials have vanished, leaving only indirect clues. Still, the logic of preparation is visible around you. The group is already thinking beyond tonight. One hunter examines the southern horizon and discusses where the herd may travel next. A woman measures the hide against a child's shoulders, planning a warmer covering before the next cold period. A toolmaker selects bone that will later become needles and points. An elder asks the children to remember the location of the river crossing. The future is entering every task. You realize that this may be one of the most important answers to ancient fear. Early humans feared hunger, cold, illness, predators, strangers, and separation. Yet their greatest defense was the ability to imagine those dangers before they arrived. They prepared shelters before storms. They taught children before mistakes became fatal. They carried embers before leaving warmth behind. They preserved food before winter emptied the land. As evening settles, the smell of roasting meat fills the camp. Smoke drifts above the shelter. The river reflects the last light of day. Everyone eats. The meal is richer than those before it, but it is not treated carelessly. Portions are shared. Strips continue drying above the hearth. Tools are cleaned and placed where they will be found tomorrow. You sit beside the fire, feeling warmth on your face. The group survived today because it remembered yesterday. It may survive tomorrow because it prepared tonight. The preserved meat hangs above the fire through the night. By morning, smoke has darkened its surface and filled the shelter with a rich, familiar scent. The river moves steadily beyond the reeds. Reindeer tracks continue south, but the group does not leave at once. There is food to prepare, hide to clean, tools to repair, and knowledge to pass on before the next journey begins. You sit near the hearth while an elder sorts several objects on a folded skin. There is a stone blade from the old cave, a shell bead found beside the spring, a broad flake exchanged with the Neanderthal toolmaker, a carved reindeer made beneath the painted wall. Each object belongs to a different place, yet all of them now rest together. They form a quiet record of movement. No one here calls it history. There are no dates attached to the objects. No one writes the names of their makers. Still, every item carries a memory. The shell recalls a distant coast, the dark flint recalls the neighbouring camp. The broad flake recalls another kind of human living beneath the same cold sky. You begin to see that human survival leaves more than bones and ash, it leaves habits. A child learns to test river ice with a pole because an elder once heard it crack. A hunter checks the wind because another hunt failed when the herd caught a human scent. A firekeeper stores dry fungus because a storm once destroyed every exposed branch. These actions continue long after the first danger has passed. This is how fear becomes tradition. The Upper Paleolithic world contains no cities, farms, or permanent governments. Social life remains organised through small mobile groups, family ties, seasonal gatherings, partnerships, and exchanges between communities. Yet many foundations of later civilization are already present in simple form. People plan together, they share food, they divide tasks, they teach children, they care for the injured, they negotiate with strangers, they remember useful places, they create symbols and stories. Civilization will eventually build larger settlements, formal laws, markets, temples, and written records. But those developments do not appear from emptiness. They grow from abilities practiced for countless generations beside fires like this one. You watch the elder pick up the stone blade. Its edge has been sharpened many times. It is shorter than it was when first made, but still useful. The elder gives it to a young toolmaker, who studies the surface and recognizes the work of an earlier hand. Tools often outlive their first owners. They can be repaired, reshaped, exchanged, and carried into new landscapes. A blade made in one valley may cut hide in another. A bone needle may pass from parent to child. A pendant may survive several generations, gathering meaning with each new wearer. Excavated sites sometimes reveal objects made from materials that originated far away. This shows that prehistoric people maintained wide networks long before roads or wheeled vehicles. Stone, shell, amber, pigment, and ideas travelled from group to group across large distances. Transportation remained slow, but connection could still be broad. A person might never see the seas, yet wear a shell that came from it. A hunter might never visit a mountain quarry, yet carry flint taken from that stone. The ancient world was crossed by invisible lines of relationship. You help the group prepare a small cache near the shelter. Several heavy bones and pieces of workable stone are placed beneath a rock ledge and covered with flat stones. They may be useful if the group returns. Food could also be hidden in cold ground or protected beneath rocks, though scavengers, moisture, and other people might find it first. One unexpected detail from prehistoric life is that people sometimes return to the same camps over extremely long periods. A shelter might contain many hearths stacked in layers, each created by visitors separated by years, centuries, or even longer. One group leaves ash, another places a fire in almost the same spot, another drops a broken point nearby. Over time, a living place becomes an archaeological archive, although no one using it realizes this. The shelter around you already carries soot from earlier fires. Your own hearth adds another dark layer. The cracked shell bead may remain after everyone leaves, waiting beneath dust for hands from a distant future. You might wonder what those future hands will misunderstand. Perhaps archaeologists will find a tool beside a bone and imagine a hunt that never happened. Perhaps they will assume two objects were used together simply because time placed them in the same layer. The past is patient, but is not always cooperative. Those who study prehistory must work from fragments. A chipped stone can reveal technique, animal bones can show butchery. Pollen can describe vegetation, teeth can preserve traces of food. Yet motives, voices, jokes, fears, and family relationships are much harder to recover. There is no complete agreement about how closely material changes reflect new peoples, new ideas, or simple adaptation. When a tool style appears in another region, it may have travelled with migrants, it may have spread through exchange. Different groups may even have invented similar methods independently. The surviving evidence leaves several paths open. You turn toward the children. They are practicing the route south using stones arranged in the dirt. One stone marks the river bend, another represents the limestone shelter. A curved bone marks the ridge where the Neanderthal camp stood. The children repeat the journey in order. Old cave, frozen stream, neighbouring fire, southern pass, painted shelter, river camp. The map is temporary, a footstep will erase it. But the route is entering memory. This knowledge may guide the group again. It may also reach people who never walked beside you. A child may grow older, join another band, and describe the safe spring beneath the cliff. A visitor may learn where flint can be found. A new family may hear about thin ice near reeds. Information spreads through marriage, friendship, trade, migration, and storytelling. Human culture becomes cumulative because one generation does not begin entirely alone. The elders do not know everything. Some memories will be wrong. Some warnings will become outdated. Some stories will change with repetition. Yet enough remains accurate to give the young a starting point. That starting point is a remarkable inheritance. You sit beside a woman sewing the cleaned reindeer hide. She uses a bone needle and twisted sinew. The garment she is making will belong to a growing child. She leaves extra space around the shoulders so it can be adjusted later. Even this simple choice looks toward the future. The child will grow. Cold weather will return. The group may travel farther south. A covering prepared now may protect someone months from now. Nearby, a hunter reshapes a broken spear point instead of discarding it. The new point is smaller, but sharp. Another person twists cord while speaking softly to a younger companion, showing how to keep the fibers even. Skill passes through movement as much as words. Hands remember, eyes copy. Mistakes are corrected. This gradual accumulation explains why human adaptation became so powerful. One person discovers a useful technique. Another improves it. A third carries it into a different environment. Over generations, knowledge becomes larger than any single mind. The group has no library. The group is the library. As afternoon fades, preparations for departure are completed. Dried meat is wrapped. The reindeer hide is folded. Embers are placed into the slow-burning material. The shell bead is threaded onto a new cord and given to the child who first found it. The child touches it with quiet pride. Perhaps the bead will travel for years. Perhaps it will be traded again. Perhaps it will be lost beside another river and discovered by someone who wonders how it arrived there. You look across the valley. Smoke from your hearth rises into the evening sky. Somewhere beyond the hills, other groups are making similar preparations. Neanderthals may still be tending fires in distant shelters. Hunters may be following mammoths across open ground. Families may be teaching children which plants return in spring. None of them can see the long future ahead. They cannot imagine farms, temples, ships, engines, or electric lights. Yet they are carrying the qualities from which all of those things will grow. Cooperation, memory, curiosity, planning, the willingness to learn from fear rather than surrender to it. Night settles around the camp. The fire shines on tools shaped by old knowledge and faces that will carry that knowledge onward. You understand that what fear left behind was not only caution, it left preparation, it left stories, it left communities strong enough to remember together, and somewhere inside those quiet acts, the first foundations of every later human world are already taking shape. Before sunrise, the group begins the journey south. The shelter by the river is left almost as it was found. Ash rests in the hearth. A few stone flakes remain near the working area. The hidden cache waits beneath its covering of rocks, ready for a return that may happen next season, many years from now, or never. You walk near the centre of the group. The child wearing the shell bead keeps one hand over it as the path rises. Hunters carry bundles of dried meat and sharpened spears. The firekeeper protects a smoking ember inside bark and ash. Elders follow the river with their eyes, matching each bend to memories of earlier journeys. Morning light spreads across the grassland. Reindeer tracks lead toward distant hills. Wolves have crossed them during the night. Ravens circle above the route, drifting on cold air. Farther west, mammoths move as dark shapes near the horizon, slow and steady beneath the pale sky. Everything around you seems to contain danger. Predators follow the herds. Winter waits beyond the turning seasons. Illness may enter the body without warning. A storm can erase their path. A stranger may offer food or raise a weapon. Hunger returns no matter how successful yesterday's hunt appeared. So what did early humans fear more than anything else? The answer is not simply wolves. It is not cave lions. Cold winds, rival groups, darkness, or even hunger by itself. The deepest fear is uncertainty. It is the possibility that the patterns holding life together may suddenly fail. The herd may not return, the fire may go out. The spring may become dry, a familiar shelter may collapse, a child may grow sick. A hunter may disappear beyond the ridge. Early humans live close to these possibilities every day. They cannot control the climate, command animals, or explain invisible disease. Their world offers no guarantee that yesterday's solution will work tomorrow. Yet you have seen that fear does not make them helpless. It makes them attentive. They watch the sky because storms arrive. They study tracks because animals move. They protect embers because cold returns. They share food because the successful hunter may fail next time. They care for the injured because every person carries knowledge the group may need. Fear becomes observation. Observation becomes memory. Memory becomes preparation. Preparation becomes culture. This long transformation is one of the central facts of human evolution. Early humans survived changing environments not because they were always stronger or faster than the animals around them, but because they cooperated, communicated, developed tools, and learned from previous generations. Neanderthals endured severe Ice Age conditions across Europe and Western Asia. Modern humans adapted to forests, savannas, valleys, coasts, deserts, tundra, and frozen plains in Africa. Communities survived harsh dry periods by following water, plants, and migrating animals across Eurasia. People adjusted clothing, shelter, food, and movement as climates shifted. Human adaptability was never the achievement of one clever individual. It belonged to communities. You reach the top of a low ridge and pause. Below, the land stretches in several directions. A river curves south. Forest covers the eastern slopes. Open grassland continues west toward the mammoths. Smoke rises faintly from somewhere far away, perhaps from the neighbouring group, perhaps from people no one here has met. There is no single road. The elders discuss the routes. One person remembers the sheltered valley near the river. Another has heard of good stone farther east. The hunters point toward reindeer tracks leading southwest. No choice is entirely safe. The group must select a path using incomplete knowledge. This is uncertainty in its purest form. Still, no one remains frozen on the ridge. A decision is made. The group will follow the river for part of the day, then turn toward the reindeer route if fresh signs continue. Scouts will move ahead, the others will remain close together. You begin walking again. Human beings have probably always preferred certainty, even while living in a world that rarely provides it. Today, forecasts, maps, medicine, stored food, and strong walls reduce many ancient risks. You can turn on a heater, lock a door, call for help, or buy food gathered and transported by people you will never meet. Yet the old uneasiness still appears. A strange sound wakes you at night. A delay feels uncomfortable when its cause is unknown. A dark road seems longer than the same road in daylight. Your body carries instincts shaped during countless evenings beyond the firelight. One unusual clue to these ancient emotions may be found in the places people repeatedly chose to live. Camps often offered wide views of surrounding land. protected entrances, access to water, and routes for escape. These practical choices suggest an understanding of safety built into the selection of shelter itself. A place was not useful only because it was warm. It had to be readable. You needed to see what approached. You needed to hear movement. You needed to know where the river, ridge, and open ground lay. Even cave entrances were often more valuable than deep chambers because they provided daylight, ventilation, and a view of the outside world. The classic image of frightened people hiding deep inside caves misses something important. Early humans could not survive by hiding from nature. They had to enter it each morning. They walked onto open plains. They followed dangerous animals. They crossed rivers and mountains. They explored unfamiliar valleys. They met strangers. They carried children into lands their ancestors had never seen. Fear lived beside courage. But prehistoric courage was rarely loud. It was not the absence of concern. It was the decision to move carefully despite uncertainty. The child with the shell bead finds a fresh track near the riverbank. The print belongs to a wolf. The child stops and points. An adult kneels to inspect it. The edges are sharp and damp soil has not yet gathered inside. The animal passed recently. The group does not panic. Hunters look toward the reeds. Children move inward. Spears are held ready. After a short wait, a wolf appears on the opposite bank. It stands quietly, grey against brown grass. The animal watches the group. You watch it in return. For a moment, two intelligent social species study one another. Both depend on cooperation. Both follow herds. Both teach their young through observation. Both use sound, posture, and shared attention. The wolf turns away. It moves along the bank and disappears into the reeds. No chase follows. The encounter becomes another memory. Perhaps tonight, a child will imitate the wolf beside the fire. An elder may explain how fresh tracks look in wet soil. The warning will pass into story and remain available when needed. This is how knowledge grows. There is no settled conclusion about when humans began telling structured stories in the way later cultures would recognize. Spoken words vanish without physical traces. Archaeologists can find hearths and carved objects, but not the exact voices surrounding them. Still, complex language, symbolic art, shared planning, and long-distance exchange strongly suggest rich traditions of communication. Stories probably carried practical knowledge, social rules, identity, and explanations of the unseen. They may also have made fear easier to bear. A danger placed inside a story has a beginning and an end. It can be repeated safely beside a fire. It can teach someone who was not there. It can transform a frightening event into shared knowledge. By afternoon, the group finds fresh reindeer signs beside the river. The decision to continue south appears sound, at least for now. Grass has been disturbed recently. A broken antler tine lies near a muddy bank. The hunters predict that the herd will rest beyond the next valley. A new camp will be needed before dark. Scouts search for a rock shelter while others gather wood. The firekeeper checks the ember. It still glows. The ancient routine begins again. Find water. Choose shelter. Watch the wind. Prepare food. Protect the youngest. Listen after sunset. You realize that the question of greatest fear has no single dramatic answer, because prehistoric life did not contain one permanent enemy. The true threat was losing connection. Connection to food, connection to fire, connection to the group, connection to remembered knowledge. A lone person without warmth, guidance, or companions faced a much harsher world than any coordinated community. Human beings answered uncertainty by becoming more connected. They shared attention. They divided risk. They remembered for one another. They created customs so that wisdom could survive the person who first discovered it. As the sun lowers, a suitable shelter is found beneath a sandstone ledge. Dry grass grows nearby. Water flows from a small spring. The entrance faces away from the strongest wind. Hides are unfolded. Children gather stones around a new hearth. The ember is placed among dry bark and fungus. Someone bends close and breathes life into it. Smoke curls upward. A flame appears. The group settles around the light, carrying every lesson from the journey into this unfamiliar place. The fire is new, but its warmth is ancient. You sit beside that warmth as evening spreads across the valley. The work of the day becomes quieter. Tools are placed against the stone wall. The last strips of meat are warmed above the coals. Children curl beneath soft animal hides, tired from walking beside the river. Outside, snow begins to fall. The flakes are small and slow. They drift through the fading light and settle on grass. Stones and the tracks left by the group. The wolf's prints soften first. Then the human footprints begin to disappear. Nothing feels threatening now. The distant call of an animal crosses the valley. Gentle and low, water continues moving beneath a thin edge of ice. Wind passes through the trees with the sound of a long, peaceful breath. You feel warm fur beneath your hands. Smoke carries the scent of pine and cooked food. The fire gives a quiet crack, then settles again. Around you, the people of this ancient world are safe for the night. Hunters rest, elders close their eyes. The child with a thin shell bead sleeps beside the hearth, one small hand resting near the pale ornament. Above the shelter, stars appear through gaps in the clouds. They shine over frozen rivers, silent forests, mammoth paths, painted caves, and valleys where countless fires have already faded. Their light touches worlds without names and memories no voice can fully recover. You have walked among those memories for a little while. You have listened beyond the firelight. You have followed herds, crossed cold water, watched storms gather, and carried a glowing ember from one shelter to another. Now the journey grows still. The ancient fears move farther away. The wolves remain beyond the river. The snow covers the path. The fire becomes softer, warmer, quieter. You're surrounded by people, stories, and the steady breathing of sleep. And as the final sparks rise into the darkness, history fades gently into dreams, sweet dreams.